have to do it.
7 o'clock in the morning.
I can't see who's on participants. Yes, he is on.
And is Steve unmuted so he can speak?
Let me.
Steve, can you test the mic?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we heard you before, that's what I
Yeah.
thought. Okay.
I thought it might be you, but
Yep, he's good.
okay. All right, I'd like to call the Village of Lannon Planning Commission meeting for Thursday, May 25th, 2023 to order at 6:31 p.m. Everyone would rise and remove your headgear for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Bennett,
Here.
Prim,
Here.
Blake, here, Nellis,
Here.
Janice,
Here.
Hay Leitner,
Here.
Ace.
Here. Statement of public notice. Item 5, discussion and possible approval of planning commission meetings from 5/8/23.
Motion we accept the management record.
We have a motion and a second by Janice. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6, citizen comments. We have any citizen comments? Yes, Terry.
I do. I was questioned, it's more like it's a comment and it's a question for the board, the commission. I was approached by a member of the Plan Commission of Lisbon. Asking me on Sunday, asking me what the development was that's just north of Willow Springs Schools, if that's Lannon. And I said, no, it's Menominee Falls. And he said, but Lannon's sign is there. Right by Willow Springs, that parking lot. And all the times I come down that road, I've never paid any attention. And he's right. There is a Village of Lannon on that side, which can be confusing to people coming in thinking that that's Lannon. Yet it's not Lannon. Lannon's on the other side, so maybe the sign should be moved to the opposite side of the road. Because when you go down farther, then you see the Lannon sign with population.
Oh, so
Well,
it's like the
it's-
welcome to Lannon sign,
Yes.
not
Yeah.
the. not the
Exactly, but it's
welcome.
not, and he's, that's why he said to me, well, isn't that Lannon? 'Cause the
Those
sign-
signs usually go on the side of the traffic flow for visibility, and that's a county right of way, so.
And then maybe it should be moved down further. Because that's actually Menominee Falls property,
It is, but on the other side is Lannon, all the way to the roundabout.
I agree. But there's always an easement. You know, that can be done with that sign. So I'm not questioning whether to move it or not, I'm just saying. It's got people confused because of the clearing that they're doing.
Sure.
Right now, and the water that's gonna be brought in, because I know St. James has to hook up. And Willow Springs is gonna have to hook up, and it's coming from underneath the viaduct.
Yep.
There, that division, so he thought it was Menominee Falls, or it was Lannon.
Yeah.
Because of the sign.
Sure.
So, food for thought.
Thank you. Anybody else, any other citizen comments? Okay. Thank you, Terry.
You're welcome.
Item 7, discussion and possible action on plan of operation and site plan for CSC storage at 20172 West Good Hope Road, Landon, Wisconsin, 53046. So this is something that's been bouncing around for a bit. Ben, did you want to go through your notes, and is the applicant here, one of the applicants?
Yes.
Would that you?
All right, you'll recall this was on the agenda last month, and because it was a special meeting moved around date, the applicant asked that it be tabled. I know the planning commission discussed this briefly last month. I think there are pretty straightforward comments here. They need to clarify the situation with the dumpster or not. I have not been back there to check the progress of the restoration, but that indicated they were very close to seeding the village's property that had been disturbed. Let's see. The only thing with the site plan is they need to add the outdoor light and then verify the hours of operation. So pretty straightforward on these.
I see in the plan of operation, then he does list where the lights are located. Itself right there, the exterior lighting, it's just not on the drawing itself.
Right, very minor thing.
You wanted just to draw it on there, or what do you want me to do with that?
Yep,
It'd be great. If you can,
I think you could just draw it onto his building plan, is what you're saying.
I think in the last meeting also had a question about the dumpster. Is he gonna have a dumpster or? How is that?
We have one, but it's going in the building.
you can keep it inside.
Yeah.
Or
That would qualify as a shielding then.
Is there any other business that you operate out of that location?
I don't operate any business out of there. A buddy of mine stores his business stuff there.
Okay. So I noticed that Google Maps did have mulchinstalled.com is located at that address.
Years ago, my dad led a landscaper in there
Uh-huh.
and he's
That's left
been,
over
he's
from
been
that.
gone. for a
Is that
while.
when Yankee was in there?
Yes. And that
Okay.
was some of the stuff that Yankee put on the village property that we ended up cleaning up.
Okay, so just so you know, Google still has that business listed at your address. So you-
Okay.
You can contact them too if you wanted to eliminate that. I just wanted to question it.
No.
As
And
far
you
as-
didn't want to indicate any hours for the weekends, you're good with that?
My buddy doesn't go there on the weekends. I mean, we might go there from time to time to work on things, whatever, but you know, it's our personal stuff, so I didn't feel the need that we had to put our time down, because
I think we should have some time down there, even if it's gonna be him.
yeah, 'cause it's your plan of operation.
Yeah, you know, this is like those garage buildings they built over in Sussex. And this would be operated the same way, even though it's a personal garage over there. They still had a plan of operation, so I just recommend that. Scott, you would put in, list some hours for Saturday and Sundays and holidays, just say 7 in the morning to 7 at night, you know, we'll just put right on the paperwork here, and that way you're covered. Don't have to worry if you show up or anything like that, that's cool, I mean, if you need better than 7 to 7, you want 7 to 9, just tell us what you want to write.
I'm not gonna go there at midnight, to, you
No,
know,
so you want, so we
shake
can,
oil or anything, you
so
know.
we could easily say 7 to 7, Saturday, Sundays and holidays if you wanted.
Yeah, we can do that.
All right, let's just wait at 7 to 7.
That way you just avoid any future hassle or questions, and it's just cleaner.
Yeah, we can go there, cut the grass, whatever we have to do.
And then I think if you would just stop by Brenda and on this drawing here that you submitted for your building, just mark it where the 2 lights are located.
Okay.
So condition on those,
I make a motion to approve the plan of operation for CSC Storage LLC.
we have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries, thank you for working through that with us. It's been
And as far as the village, it is top filled and seated.
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Hopefully it does better than our restoration.
You'll be required to water it in the first 30 days.
All right, item number 8, discussion of possible action on sign permit application for Buckley West Good Hope Road, Landon, Wisconsin, 53046. So Ben, I'll let you run through your comments on
Sure.
this as well.
To my knowledge, they don't have any current signs on the building or ground or full post mounted signs. So the ordinance allows, 2 signs, any combination of wall, canopy, ground, post mounted. They submitted in here 2 options. The location, height, area, all complies with the ordinances. They're only doing a ground sign or a post mounted sign. I haven't heard from them which final one. I put in my notes here. It's interesting that this is one entity that operates 2 businesses. So it's not truly like a multi-tenant sign like we would see down at CJ Lighting and Just Smoking. Nonetheless, they're advertising 2 different businesses on there. I don't think that's a big deal. It's not all too unlike L&R, for example, where they might advertise their business and then advertise a couple brands that they represent, etc. And either way, if this was deemed a multi-tenant sign or not, since this is the only sign, it would still conform with the ordinances. So I last had communication with the applicant yesterday, and they had not yet turned in like a formal permit application.
Right.
Is that still the case?
Yes.
Okay, and so I told them I'd add them on here, and if they got their application in, it was probably ready to act on, and if it's not, then it's not, because we don't know which option they intend to go with.
So are they looking for some direction on the preference from us at this point? Do they care, or are we simply tabling them?
It's up to you. I don't think there's any way that the plan commission can do anything other than table it, since it's an incomplete application. But to that point, if you wanted to comment on anything else, feel free. If not, we'll see you next month.
Yeah, because we don't know how long the light's gonna be on all night, or is it gonna be on just, so.
Well, and some things to consider, part of this is an electronic message center on this monument. The other thing is, I'll just make a general comment regarding pole signs. Most municipalities no longer allow these types of signs. And frankly, I would be in favor of eliminating that option as well. However, since that it's not on the books at this point in time, I suppose it's an available option, but I would at least be in favor of making a motion that the planning commission recommend to the legislative committee to consider eliminating pole mounted signs from our sign ordinance.
I make the motion. To table.
We have a motion and a second to table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion.
Do we have to, how would we make that recommendation? We'd have to have that as an agenda item?
Yes.
Okay.
Under the ordinances, amendments to the zoning map and the zoning code can be initiated by individual petition, action of the plan commission, or on the initiative of the village board. So I would recommend that you place it on the agenda and some kind of documentation be distributed, explaining the rationale for the modifications and perhaps even suggesting places in the ordinances that can be modified. I don't believe that our office has ever been asked to look at pole signs per se in the village. This has come up in the context of the attachment of third-party signs to poles, utility poles, some poles supporting village control signs by service clubs and things of that sort. So consideration should be given to those ramifications.
and maybe the plan commission can discuss it and make a recommendation to the legislative committee and to the board. There is a formal process set forth in the ordinance for that.
Okay.
That can be followed.
Brenda, can you just make a note? I'd like to put that on next month's agenda. Thank you.
And, I think from now on too, if the person doesn't show up, I think it's automatic table. We gotta get these people in, so we can answer questions.
Yeah, I'm in favor of that as well. Item 9, discussion of possible.
Can we make a suggestion that, you know, he, the planning commission would prefer not a pole sign?
Yeah, I've made note of that.
Yeah, okay.
Item 9, discussion and possible action regarding the plan of operation and site plan for 7291 North Landon Road, Landon, Wisconsin 53046. Want to go through this one?
Yeah, so I want to preface this one by saying this is a long and complicated review. Part of the background behind that is because this is such a historic story structure. Okay, and specific to the parking, the ordinance says that the plan commission has flexibility in applying some of its rules. So there's issues related to legal non-conforming in the sense that this is zone E2, which requires a minimum 20,000 square feet. I think the actual area is somewhere around 13 or 14,000 square feet. What else? There's a portion of the deck that's in the setback, which there is, the plan commission can approve up to 150 square feet of porch or deck into the setback. There's some encroachment on the offset to neighboring properties as far as where vehicles are being parked. So the offset to commercial properties is 3 feet, the offset to residential is 10. But again, planning commission has some flexibility in applying that, which I'll tell you, I would advise that I believe they show 3 feet, and I think that's fine. One of the reasons for that is the ordinances require that there be a privacy fence between commercial properties and residential properties where they abut, and the site plan shows that they're putting in a partial privacy fence. And I think if they just wrap that around a portion of the parking lot to the west where it abuts the residents, that'll in my mind kind of cure or address whatever the intent is in having 10-foot separation for parking next to a residential property, because it'll be, you know, adequately screened. That's some of the high points from the site plan review. A couple of instances from or highlights from just the general application. They indicate on the site plan that there's an intent to have a future garage with a lofted apartment above. While this is currently zone B2, and B2 allows commercial on the first floor and residence on top, I believe if you built a garage with a lofted apartment on top, that it would start to blur the line between the multifamily or duplex residence type property and should not be allowed. Let's see, some other background information, I guess, big picture background. It's my understanding from talking with their architect, Chad Bladel, that, you know, last time they were in here for a concept review, they kind of had option 1 of just kind of doing the minimum or focusing on the minimum, and option 2 being more robust, talk about bid, finance partnership, etc. Chad has kind of just let me know, due to the appraisal, etc., and their desire to just make use out of the building now, they want to start small and be open to the conversation about bid stuff in the future, but they want to start with kind of what's laid out here now. They indicated that the potential use for the commercial space would be leased retail or art studio. So interestingly, art studio is requires a conditional use. Conditional use permit. Is that an echo?
Steve, did you have something?
No.
Okay. I think that, you know, right now they've indicated that they want to get going with these renovations and know that they can use the first floor for retail, which I think is a permitted use. I know it's a permitted use. But I think, you know, obviously a separate plan of operation would be required whenever that lessee, or if you guys want to use the space, a separate plan of operation would be required for that specific business operation. So we're kind of looking at this application tonight as like the parent property, encompassing what's going to happen on the property, plan of operation, the site plan layout, all the details, etc. They put in here I think their architect continues to do a really good job with the application and submitting the materials we're looking for, etc. They put in a palette of materials for exterior finishes that they intend to use. My only comment there is that the village is using TID funds to come up with a downtown kind of like design guide, design standard. So that's not in place yet, but I just suggest that if the applicant is willing to be open to whatever those standards are, I don't know how it works with the timing of your project, but they probably will be ready by the end of the summer. And there's going to be a public input process. They're certainly more than welcome to participate in that, but just wanted to put that out there for the Plan Commission to be aware of. That either this property could be a trendsetter, or it could be, you know, depending on how the timing works out, it could be a first application of whatever some of those design element guidelines might be. If you felt it was valuable or important, I'm happy to kind of step through things point by point, but those are some of the big issues. And we'd certainly presumably welcome comment from the applicants, and we can dive into more specifics.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to give them an opportunity to maybe kind of address some of those high points that Ben just highlighted, and see if you've had time to reflect on those, or if you, I presume you've heard of comments previous to this, or?
So I just handed it off to them.
Oh, okay. So did that spur any thoughts or comments from you, concerns? What do you guys think?
We did have some concerns about sidewalks. You know, that are in front of the building and our new approach for our new parking lot.
Yep.
We were wondering if we could get some help from the village in the sidewalks and that approach. I know our architect has in the front of the building, maybe like a 7-foot sidewalk, something really nice it looks. You know, instead of just a standard 3 or 4 foot sidewalk.
That's probably gonna, I mean, that's county, all county roads there, county right of ways, that I would think that's gonna be very difficult, but that would be something that Ben would know more about than I.
Yeah, I guess I did take notice, other than that I think the sidewalks existing?
They're existing.
Parallel? Yeah, and you're just saying they're in rough shape?
Yes, yeah,
Oh,
they're
okay.
lowered and
Yeah, so the village has, that's on a list of a broader issue that village is aware of, kind of sidewalks that need attention.
okay,
So yeah, the sidewalks that are in the right of way there, even though it's county.
Right.
Ron knows more than I do, but I believe the sidewalks are still the village's.
Yeah.
Village responsible.
I was talking about, I thought I heard you say you wanted to extend the sidewalks, make them 7 foot.
no, well, we do have a picture of that in our drawings.
I don't think that's accurate for what's actually. existing right now. I think that's just been drawn that way.
Okay, so you're not talking about changing the curb line? then?
No.
Okay, all right,
We do,
I misunderstood.
We do though have to cut a new access, you know, because our driveway
Sure.
entrance is gonna be moved down some.
So our concern with that was, like, the existing sidewalk that's there, that might, you know, if we're cutting in a curb, that's gonna have to be demolished, and I guess the concern will be whose responsibility is the repair work for that. And then, where the current driveway curb cut is, how does that get repaired?
Right.
The
That's,
old curb cut.
there's no curb there.
oh, there's no curb
I
there,
got you.
that's right, that's on that end, yeah.
Yes.
Typically, that would be the applicant's responsibility.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, and if you're doing asphalt in there, you don't have to replace the sidewalk that gets removed. You know, I don't see, right, you don't have to have concrete
Oh, yes, you do.
sidewalk.
Yeah, because this is one of these things where. It's technically in county right away, so the village has to follow the county standards for the sidewalks, even though they're village sidewalks, they're in the county's right away.
Okay.
If that.
So they cut the curb, they'd have an asphalt approach, they'd have a concrete sidewalk, and then
Yeah.
they'd continue their asphalt paving beyond that for the parking lot.
More likely than not, it would be a concrete apron, a concrete sidewalk and asphalt beyond it.
Anything else?
So then we also wanted to talk about the power, the overhead power that's brought into the building there. I don't know if we could get the village's help with relocating that to underground. So it would just have a better view, you know, of the street and
That is an expensive, have you gone to We Energies yet and asked for a bid?
No, we.
no.
Yeah, it's
That
a,
would come with like phase 2 and the, like,
So
I'd say it's
that-
open for discussion as part of phase 2, but we
Right.
can't.
yeah, we can start that early because they're like 8 months out right now. So you
Sure.
call them and you say, I'm interested, they'll come, you know, tell you what it costs to get it done, but it takes a long time.
We also, I know there was a concern brought up, or one of the concerns is the size of the parking lot.
Mhm.
So we recently just got a new contractor who gave us a new bid for that with a slightly larger parking lot. It would add an additional, about an additional 400 feet of 400 square feet of parking. So I don't know if that's something, it would come in to the east.
It would
To
add
the
about
right, if
5
you come in,
cars
yeah,
to the lady side.
bringing our total to 10 to 11, putting that. So I guess I'm just looking for feedback on that, if that would suffice for the larger parking lot or.
If I
Yeah.
personally didn't have any comments regarding the number of spaces, they did put on here that they. Quite frankly, I like the layout of the site. I think it works well. I think it preserves green space between the parking lot and the structure. Which I think is an advantage as opposed to having the parking all up take the building and just some green space out from the back. So they also put on here that their intent is, I think, 2 resident spaces, staff space, and maybe a couple patron spaces. But then otherwise, they're relying on nearby public parking, which would include the village hall, public parking lot. If they wanted to do more parking, I don't believe that's an issue. We'd have to see a plan for that, but it's also not necessarily a requirement either.
And then for the garage with the loft apartment, we're mainly really just trying to build a garage. And maybe future, you know, about putting an apartment up there, but we're mainly just looking to have a couple small garage there. In the existing pad that's there. There was an existing garage at one time there.
So it would be, we would enter on the wide side of the building, garage door facing out to the street.
Yes.
Currently, we have an ordinance that says you can only have a max height of 17 feet per garage.
Okay,
So you're 36 wide, 18 foot to center. At a 1 foot pitch, that's already at 18 feet, bro, you know, it's. You're climbing fast, so
sure.
you're gonna be sloped more, you ain't gonna have the headroom, so. The other thing is, I believe that when they do. Something for conditional use, they're gonna have to have a conditional use, public hearing for conditional use permit.
If that were to be,
If that was to be,
based on the actual business that occupies that. Um,
that front deck out here, the porch area. What are you doing with that, other than you can't,
We want to reface it with land and stone, like how it was on the left.
okay,
That's all dilapidated, and the right side, we want to continue with new land and stone. And there was a spot for like a garden or like a little flower patch that's on the right, but we want to make that, continue that with concrete. And then just put a banister or railing around the whole thing.
because you really have no room there to encroach anymore onto the right of way or anything like that.
No, we don't plan, we don't want to change the stairs. We just want to leave it exactly how it is, just put.
Kind of scrape some of that splattering that you guys got out there in the corner there.
Sure, yeah, we'll get it fixed now.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I think what happened is. When it became evident what was happening over there, I think the building inspector. Came over and had a little discussion, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah, we were on the quote.
Time out.
Yeah, yeah. And then that's when we hired our architect and
All right, so you mentioned in your plans that your ask for phase one is to talk about parking, safety, lighting, and stormwater management.
yeah, so. Parking, again, the village has flexibility in application. I would argue that if they are gonna have a future garage, that they're pretty well maxed out on the amount of parking area. Now, specific to stormwater,
How about the safety lighting for the parking area, specifically the architects?
yeah, so.
There's not anything we can do about that.
Correct. To me, that's a bit of an odd thing where, usually it's your architect solving that problem with you and then us just reviewing to say that it meets standards as opposed to us rolling up the sleeves and helping you solve that problem per se. So one thing that is required of a site plan is like a site photometric, which all that is shows it's like a grid map that has a bunch of dots with numbers that says how many foot candles of light are at each of these points, and they have software where they plunk in the light fixtures that are proposed and you just demonstrate that the lighting is adequate and there's no spillage onto the neighboring property. So, I would suggest that's, and maybe one of my comments here is that is one element that you still have to figure out as opposed to us.
I guess the question was more due to the size of the parking lot. If there's a specific requirement for the side of the lot being this big, you need to have this many lights, or.
we were thinking about when we get to the future garage, about having our parking lights on the side of the garage.
Sure, and that makes sense. We see that a lot. I'm not aware of a specific. Section 7850 addresses off-street parking and loading and access requirements. And I'm not aware of a specific item in here that require lighting.
Currently, you're not showing any lighting then.
Not at the far end of the parking lot, only off of we would have lighting above the entrances, like sconce type lighting. For the residents above and then at all the entrances.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's. Yeah. I'm visual, I kind of need to see the. And I think you've shown a couple of options. In here for like the parking configuration, on this page here. But what I'm hearing is that this has been redesigned now. For a different entrance point? Is that correct?
No, it's exactly what's on there.
Okay,
We were just looking that we want to add additional parking on the east side of the parking lot.
gotcha, a couple spaces there.
Yeah.
These
Yeah.
three spaces.
There's like a little tree there right now on
Mhm.
phase one. It would be an additional maybe, I think 3 or 4 spaces. And I guess that was born out of the concern of if we have to have 12 spaces, how are we gonna make that work?
Right,
So you're
If
talking,
that's not a requirement, then
so you're talking about that little green area where it says, like on this, particular drawing that shows the future garage?
no, we're talking about this one right here.
If you,
this one here, Mike, where on here they added some
Oh,
extra
yeah,
spaces on the east side of the.
then I definitely gonna want more screening material along that sidewalk and then, so the headlights on the cars aren't shining back up into this intersection. You know,
It's on the street.
okay. More screening in this area here than along the sidewalk and the sidewalk going to the side door there. Because the headlights would be pointing right out to the intersection,
Yeah, they've got landscape there.
but nothing is marked as what kind of trees or anything or kind of bushes, you know, they could have a little 1-foot bush there, you know, it kind of make a little more sense.
Right, because you've got a 1,300 square foot 4-bedroom apartment upstairs, that's gonna be minimum 2 cars, right? And you'd want on-site parking for those tenants or yourselves, whoever's in that space. Then if you have any sort of business downstairs, you're gonna have at least 1 staff, so there's 3 spots. And you, on the minimalistic plan, you have 3, 4, 5 plus the truck. So you're kind of minimal there if you
Yeah.
want people to come and sit at a coffee shop.
Right.
Then I guess that just is dependent on who your leaseholder or the lower is. I mean, in general, I really spent a lot of time on this on a recent trip I had and I really do like. A lot of what you're doing, the railings, I mean, these are just my personal comments, the railings are very modern and contemporary versus a lot of the historical, but then you start doing charcoal gray siding and that kind of leans a little bit more contemporary. It's not a historical, it's a historical building for us personally, but it's not designated as one. So I really grew to like that, you know, I'm really glad somebody's doing something with that property. I
Well-
mean, I've been looking at that since I moved here, thinking, oh, it's got potential, but it has so many challenges, so. So we appreciate you tackling this and
Well, I have a question about the siding, one instance here, it says you're painting the siding, but yet on the materials, it looks like it's a new siding.
it
So,
would be painted with, kind of in phase 1, what we can do now, it would just be painted a charcoal gray.
okay,
And then if we move into like phase 2, it would be. If we have TID funding, then it would be 3-sided, but it would be in similar color.
yeah, that is an asbestos product, so that's a remediation rather than just a re-siding, which is a big bite. So, yeah.
One of the, I did go over there with Liz though and talked with the contractor a couple of years ago that was looking at it. And apparently they've lightened up quite a bit on those conditions for asbestos removal and remediation. kind of backed off of that.
No, you still have to. be
But it's
licensed,
still more
though. You still-
expensive than just.
Yeah, yeah,
just
and you-
popping it off.
and you've got to dispose of it currently. Yeah, it's a lot more than.
It is, we got some quotes and
Yeah. I mean, phase one of what you're looking at here is kind of at the top of our budget. At
Right.
this point, so, and that's, we're here to, to ask for approval, or your opinion on what needs to be changed yet, so we can get approval as soon as possible. We've been owners for a year now, and we really would like to get moving on this
Sure.
project too.
So let me ask you a question. Is the garage a definite for you, like a
No.
must have?
absolutely not, no.
It was just a kind of an after.
And then the spot was there, so we
Yeah.
were like, maybe we could reuse it.
Right. Now, I get it. You're trying, it's an income generating property for you. You're trying to maximize that.
Right.
It makes sense, but. I just was trying to understand the functionality or the need.
No, right, no, just the right income sense.
I mean, because if that's not there, then you have opportunities for. More parking into there and maintaining more green space along Main Street and.
So what are we really approving here today? I mean, are we approving that, yeah, go ahead, put the parking lot in, or are we just approving what we want to see on the parking lot, or? I mean, obviously, we don't know what's gonna go on the first floor, so nothing gets approved for that, because so they could do everything they want for the second floor, because they get a building permits for the builder. From the building inspector for building out the apartment. So is this a plan of operation for the apartment? Or is this a plan of operation? Yes, that's it.
I would like to take a crack at answering that. It's a plan of operation for, that includes the site modifications as shown. All kind of commercial and industrial submittals require the interior and exterior building plans. So yes, that's part of it. I think what you're talking about is specifically the use.
Well,
And the use is part of it, but the layout of the site and the appearance of the building and the floor plan is a big part of it. And I think they're looking for, I think, some type of action in order to continue with the renovations that are consistent with what's shown here. What I'm saying is, think of it, I always go back to the CJ Lighting building, okay? CJ Lighting owns that building, and they have a plan of operation that shows like 4 different retail places that are available for lease. They, in effect, have to show that on their plan of operation. And then each person that leases that has to have a plan of operation for how they're using that individual space. So similarly here, their plan of operation would allow them to proceed with the renovations, rent the upstairs, and advertise the bottom for lease. And then the lessee would have to come in with a plan of operation specific to what they're doing in that space. So I think this plan of operation is really important because, as I was discussing with Hector a little bit before tonight's meeting, there are, it's a non-conforming building because the building location is within the setbacks. It's a non-conforming lot because the lot is smaller than the zoning requires. Nonetheless, the village can proceed to allow this, but it has to be with some clear understanding that it's not just okay, we might put some spaces, parking spaces here or some there. Each little modification to the location has its little nuanced, what's the offset to this corner or that corner, or we need screening here, etc. So the way I just sense that this is going is perhaps either some type of conditional approval that would require them to come back with a definitive site plan based on what they've kind of heard here. Presumably we'll talk with their architect about, or giving them the feedback and just asking them, if they're not ready yet and they need to tweak some things, that there's just no action and it comes back altogether.
see, that's what I was looking at. I'm just trying to get my head around this. I think what I need to see clearly is. Well, we want to expand the parking lot, but we got a drawing here of the parking lot this way, we have to. I need to see a final site layout, what your architect says, this is what we want you guys to go to the boards, the commission and say. This is the parking lot you want to put in, okay? And show the fencing along the north and coming down the west. Show me the plantings, show me the types of plantings, what type of trees, what type of bushes that you plan on putting in there. Because we need to see the specifics like that.
Sure.
As far as the architectural standards, stuff like that, like we said, they're working on this whole downtown. And we're gonna want you to work with, hopefully the village can have some information and work with you on that. So, but I would really need to see more on the parking. The landscape, and the fencing. To really overall approve this, because. I could just see how we would say one thing and all of a sudden something happens, well, you guys said this, well,
Well, now that we know that our parking.
you're
lot
so
size-
close, you're
We
like,
know that our parking lot size, we thought we were gonna be too small and. We were gonna have to, have a bigger parking lot, but since we don't, can we just proceed forward with what we have on paper now? And we'll worry about the parking lot in the future.
Well, my question is, what's your kind of timing construction wise,
We
et cetera? And has the building inspector told you anything about what you need out of plan commission to keep going?
we need approval to send it to the state, to get state approval with our plans.
Oh,
We have not been able to do it, pull any permits for electrical, for anything interior, any of the infrastructure.
okay,
So we can't get moving on inside until we have approval.
Our goal is to. Get it up and running, a 4-bedroom apartment upstairs with a sufficient parking lot.
Yeah.
And then we'll worry about getting a business or converting over to a gathering space or cafe.
Yeah.
After we get it upstairs, up and running and occupancy.
when are you planning on doing the porch or deck?
We want to
As
do
soon as we get approval, we
that.
Right away, if you got approval, you could.
can start tomorrow. We have contractors lined up for
Okay.
everything.
So here's my thing. I don't take issue at all with their plans for the interior of the building. I don't have any issue as I lay out in my comments with the location of the porch, other than to acknowledge that there is a portion of it that appears to be less than 150 square feet that's in the side setback line, or maybe it's front setback, but anyhow, it doesn't encroach or impede any vision sight triangles, et cetera, and the plan commission can approve up to 150 square feet. So it sounds like the building stuff could be done. Now, here's a couple of things. The parking lot has to be paved. So my concern about doing like a partial approval and just submitting or just acting on the buildings is that you have to understand that parking has to be paved there.
Yeah.
And it would be with some type of, I don't even know if there's an option to approve a portion of this conditionally and you guys finalize your parking lot design and come back or something to allow you to keep going on your process.
The three items to me seem to be the parking lot configuration, the screening and the lighting
And the water.
And landscaping, according to Mike.
and landscaping, yeah.
We're good on there. I
Oh, we're
covered
good
that.
on the drainage.
Yeah, there's no requirement for stormwater management. plan, but-
It's less than the land disturbance is less than.
So all of these things are kind of like periphery type things that are part of the package, but I think,
Yeah. It's a good way of putting it.
I think personally, I love the idea and what you're trying to do here. I think, this could be a nice kind of first start to kind of rejuvenate some of these older buildings, and I would hope that we would find a way to help with some of that expense to elevate the level of the project. So I'm certainly in favor of, if we can,
okay,
as long as council thinks we can.
so let me throw the motion out there and then we'll let council shoot me.
Yeah, let's get a motion in a second.
Okay, I make a motion that we approve the plan of operation with the following conditions. That they could proceed with the building restoration and modification, but they must return for a parking lot, screening, fencing, and landscape by the next plan commission meeting.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hector, do you have anything to add to that, or are you comfortable with that process?
Well, there's another aspect to this that hasn't been discussed, which may be beneficial not only for these property owners, but for other similarly situated property. It appears that the village zoning map lacks the identification of properties that enjoy the benefit of the original Hatfield configuration, which was basically the original buildings with very reduced footprints. And with that comes a certain amount of flexibility in terms of minimum standards that have to be met. I guess I would invite Ben to comment on that as to how it might impact what we discussed with regards to this particular property.
Yeah, so it has to get into a bit the. Interestingly, the setbacks and the lot size requirements, minimum requirements are smaller in the ROP business district. The ROP business district says specifically that this operates as far as permitted uses, just like B2 business district. So interestingly, this is zoned the more modern B2, and ROP business is intended to allow a lot of the same things. But is, instead of having a 20,000 square foot minimum lot size, 10,000 square foot. So right now they would conform with ROP business, except it's not zoned that way.
Isn't the ROP section 7080A from Hemlock to Good Hope, landed east to, I think it's Lake over here. So that building falls in
Right.
that district, even though it's zoned B2, but isn't that still part of that ROP building?
So that's one of my questions is I don't know if ROP, is applied sort of as like an overlay.
But that's the way I read it this morning when I was going through all the ordinances. I said, well, that building fits in the ROP.
Because I double checked, the building is in the Hatfield plat, and it says specifically, this district is intended to provide business zoning requirements for the Hatfield original plat period. So it's in there. So why does it matter? Lot size, I mean, it is what it is, whether it's a legal non-conforming lot size, it's never going to be any smaller, presumably, never going to be any bigger. It just is the size that it is. So that is, it would be nice to clean that up and so that it wasn't legal non-conforming, but setback, which is from the public right-of-way line, is 15 feet, whereas B2 is 25. So that would sort of clean up the issue with the porch extends into the 25, but would not extend into the 15. So it's just one of these.
Because later on today.
It'd be better if either it was zoned ROP business, or if the plan commission just has a history of letting it apply by default, by nature of it, meeting the definition of being in the original Hatfield plat. I just don't know.
See, that's why I kind of like, know it's all over the sheet that, and I'm glad I read this morning. Because I put that building back in ROP, because that's what I always thought that building was, because later on tonight, when we talk about garages, there's a lot of that, if you're talking about the ROP, you know, there's a lot of difference, you know, with garages because of the old barns that used to be on some of these properties that turned into garages, so.
You have a picture of the existing foundation there with a barn that's there.
Yeah.
The
So,
access, to that point, the accessory structure height allowable in the ROP is 25 feet.
yeah, see, I you know, didn't read that part, you know, but that, I don't know if that. Because I know in ROP, if a house or a building goes down, it can only be replaced on footprint. I don't know if a garage, if it doesn't exist, it doesn't show up, if it can be. Go to back to 25 feet, I think it has to come back to the standards then,
Well, and a garage is allowed, it just would have to come back to the standards.
which is 17 max.
Sure.
You know, so,
Gotcha.
because I know whenever they were replacing some of the garages in the ROP, they had to come to the new standard height. And that goes back many, many years.
So I think our intent here is to support these people in the revival of a building that probably deserves it. So what can we do to help them? Hector, what's your recommendation on them?
Well, you have to look at this in a larger scope. There are a number of individual properties that qualify for the benefit of being identified on the village zoning map as an ROP property. Now, by following that approach, you're perpetuating those conditions. You're basically saying to people, we're fine with the scale that we have here. And you can, to the best of your ability, rehabilitate, maybe even replace to a certain degree what's there. On the other hand, other communities take the position that by imposing a new zoning, namely the B2 zoning, there's an expectation that at such point in time that the building either is lost through fire or just natural deterioration, that there will be an upgrading to a larger standard. But given the limited size, the only way you're going to be able to accomplish reconstruction is if you have someone with deep pockets who will acquire those lots, consolidate them, and meet the current standards. If the Plan Commission is inclined to encourage people to upgrade what is there now, my suggestion is that you do two things. First of all, consider approving the plan of operation with regards to the interior of this particular building to allow them to then go back to the building inspector and obtain their permits for the interior repair, restoration, remodeling, maintenance, whatever you want to call it. And secondly, that you place on your next agenda a discussion about modification of the zoning map with the assistance of Strand as to what the implication would be. In other words, simply a chart. B2, these are the requirements. ROP, these are the requirements. Okay, here's an overlaid map. These are the properties that would be impacted by it. In some communities, they call that the old village part of the community. The city of Brookfield has that on the far western end. And simply because people don't have the resources or the infrastructure isn't there to support complete renovation. And once you've looked at that, then it may be appropriate for you to recommend that there be a modification of the zoning map. When Ben and I talked about this, I tried to recall what the intent was. And unfortunately, the person who was intimately involved in that process was then President Newman. And I don't think that we ever got to the point of reconciling the modification of the zoning map with that zoning.
I think the ROP went back before him, though. I think it went back to almost Shirley Avenue days.
Oh, well.
I mean, that's when we started talking about it for, was it code 2020 or something like that, that back in the day, I don't know what it's even called anymore. But when we started working on figuring out what the zoning of this town was. Comprehensive plan, like you said, I mean, we had that one company come in, and they had a survey every house, every building, and
Sure.
Right.
Well, maybe Jan can look at the comprehensive plan as it addresses that. And maybe that is a gap. I think the logical explanation is that no one has come forward with plans of the scope that are now being presented to really cause us to think about that.
yeah, because I know during the years of President Winter's days, when they found some properties other than this area, they said it was Scrivener's error from our days when we were writing it, because that's how Cut and Go, basically, or Johnson and everybody else before that, you know, we had that designated as once the barracks went out of there, I forgot who had it. The paid transport, when they had it, when they were going out of there, that was supposed to turn into residential, and they said, well, that was a Scrivener's error. And there's a few other properties, and so that one could have easily had fallen under Scrivener's error. Like also, well, it's along Main Street, it's B2, when it shouldn't have been. It's on clearly in the.
Well, regardless of how we got here, the decision, as I see it, is for you in concert with the board to decide, okay, are we gonna carve out this area that will have, because of its historic limitations, a different look and feel than the rest of the community? And that's not unusual in most communities, especially those that have roots like Planet. You do have to consider the limitations when those buildings were erected. We did not have the automobile traffic that we now have, and that's a major challenge. And some communities say, well, we can't do anything about it. Let them see public parking. Other communities have gone so far as to acquire land and create parking spaces. Some with some success, others with minimal success. So that would be my recommendation.
Well, basically, then the motion I made then would work, because we're just giving them okay on the building and the
Yeah.
modification restoration, but they have to come back with. Give us specific now on the parking lot, show us the landscaping, the screening and the fencing.
And the lighting,
There really is no lighting in the parking lot that they're talking about right now, but if they want to show lighting. But they're talking about lighting on a future garage, but. So designated, but basically, I guess they would have to say, yeah, we're gonna have a lamp post here, and if we care, we put a garage and we'll tear a lamp post out, I don't know.
And just for clarification for the applicant, you had specifically said interior, but did you intentionally exclude any exterior renovations?
Yes.
Okay, you want to,
Because conceivably, for example, as Ben has indicated, setback for an ROP is different. And so that would give them more flexibility. But until you finalize the village's intentions at this point in time, they may be seeking approval of something that you and they may have second thoughts about down the road.
But if I understood correctly, in either zoning, the ROP or the B2. This commission has the authority to authorize encroachment into the right of way up to a certain amount of square feet, which my understanding is this does not exceed. So we could,
The setback, you meant.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, so right of ways.
yeah, sorry.
in the county, yes. Mhm.
Um,
Yes,
so do I
That's correct.
understand that correctly?
And
That's
that's,
correct.
and that's just, we're just talking about the, on this,
Front porch.
not the front porch. The side porch, I think is what they're talking about, because the front porch, you can't move it any.
Right,
The front porch, you know, that concrete area. He cleaned up, finished cleaning it up and building the rock wall and then pouring his top. He's talking about, I think we're talking about that side porch area.
so we could though, given the plans that are presented here, decide as a group though, that we're okay with this encroachment, whether it gets determined to be ROP or P2.
The reason why I'm hesitating is I have not had a copy of that to examine. And, if they are in a position to take it in phases until they too understand and digest what, Strand has recommended. And Strand has had the opportunity to compare the two. It might be more prudent to postpone that aspect.
So are you comfortable with what we're proposing here and holding back on some of these other areas?
Yes, yeah, yep.
Okay,
Because they can go to the state, and the state's like at least what, 6-8 months out for, do they need to go to the state with these plans?
Yeah,
They do,
this, I don't know firsthand, but I know Paul will make them.
yeah.
well, because
It's for the building, it's for the building,
they're gonna have to, because there is literally no interior plumbing in that building.
right? They have to have state approved plans for their building.
Here's my suspicion though, given that it's retail.
Yeah.
Is that they're gonna be required to have an ADA accessible
Yeah.
entrance. And they're blending that in with the porch.
Right.
The side porch, right?
The side porch.
Right.
Yeah.
So while I don't know the answer, I think it would be advantageous if possible to act on them together for that reason, because otherwise when they route this through for state approved
Right.
plans,
Right,
they'll probably get flagged for not having an ADA entrance, and then what did anyone accomplish here anyways?
right.
Well, see, that's what, you know, so it's a matter of, you know, the modification allows them to work on their plans, getting the plans approved for that side porch. Same time, what we need to do is get, through the village board, clarity of the buildings that are in B2 that should be ROP B2. Or ROP business. Is what should be redesignated, so we might have to do is just adjust the zoning map. To put these buildings that are in that area in ROP. Business, if they're in B2. And that'll have to be an agenda item through the. Probably do that on June 12th that night when the plan commission meets or something, for the public hearing with the board. Or we're not meeting then. We don't,
Any map amendment or zoning amendment need the class 2 public. hearing.
right, but we can start, we can make a motion that night if it's on the agenda, we can make a motion to the village board. They can start the process for the
Sure.
class 2, you know, on June 12th right away.
Absolutely.
And then by. At least by July, because we won't have time in June meeting, but by July. We can set the public hearing at the end of June. For that notice and all that, and then, you know, goes forth from there.
Okay, so,
You have a motion, right?
yeah, we have a motion and a second. Have we resolved all the issues related to that or possible issues? Anything left?
Can I just repeat it for clarity on my part. Sure. We're approving the interior renovations.
We are adopting the plan of operation, right? Is that what you said, Hector? You said we should approve the plan of operation.
With conditions, it's got with conditions.
Okay,
Where they can proceed with building restoration and modification. Which allows them to start their state plans for that side porch.
right.
But they need to come back with the parking lot layout that they want. Showing us the screening and the fencing coming all the way down along the west. Landscaping, listing the plantings and all that.
Right. But yeah, then the motion then would include interior and exterior renovations, even though we've agreed that maybe some of the exterior stuff we want to coordinate with TID plans and stuff like that. But it would allow them to get that ADA on the plans in order to get that whole package to the state in one fell swoop.
And then are we explicitly approving the porch as shown
I'd say, yeah.
on the side? Yes.
Yes, and I, given what you've indicated, that. ADA requirement is there. It makes sense, otherwise I'm just gonna set everything back.
Yeah, it's not really gonna accomplish.
In the meantime, then we could work on clarifying, cleaning up the zoning.
Right.
Okay, so Ben, you're clear on the motion and what's included?
I wrote down, proceed with approval of the plan of operation. Including building restoration and modification of interior and exterior of the structure, including side porch as shown. Come back with parking lot, screening, fencing, and landscaping.
Brenda,
And
syncs
lighting.
up with what you got?
Sure.
She copied it.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. For your patience and your commitment to doing this well and doing it right.
Yeah, we look forward to get started.
Let's do it.
We are
Be back in a month. Thank you.
with paint and dirt on you. Okay, item number 10, discussion and possible action regarding the plan of operation and zoning complaint related to a contractor storage yard located at 21052 Westwood Hope Road. Hector, I think. You want to grab this one, or should we have Ben discuss this?
I'm still cleaning up my notes from the last item here, so I think that Hector can start.
Okay,
Well,
this one,
yeah, just for everyone's information, the complaint was, submitted to the village. That it appeared that H.M. Grant was operating contractors, yard without a plan of operation. There is a roofing debris pile approximately 60 by 60 by 12. Which had fire potential approximately 2 weeks ago. This was received on May 10th by the village. Approximately 2 weeks ago, refreshing operation occurred. And accompanying that are photos of equipment. A pile of what I would describe as debris. Dark. Either asphalt or concrete rubble. Another photo of greater photo showing the dark debris. And then some kind of metal flashing that is appears to have been ripped off or crushed in some fashion. So there is no further information on this. Has your office been had any opportunity to verify any of this information
No,
or look into it?
no,
Okay. We did talk last time about establishing a protocol for the handling of complaints. Perhaps maybe on a prototype basis. This is something that can be used to examine it, and just to remind everybody what I recall of that conversation. No action was taken. But it was recommended that a written complaint be used rather than just an oral phone call. This complaint form is available on the village's website, and that it be referred to the building inspector and the police chief for joint investigation or operation, and a recommendation from them as to what action should be taken. And that should come back to the plan commission with the informal understanding that their recommendation is going to be shared with the property owner in the hopes that the property owner, appreciating the impropriety of some activity, would voluntarily take some action to clean up things. When it came before the plan commission, the status of the corrective action can be reported, and in the absence of corrective action, the plan commission, or sufficient corrective action, the plan commission can recommend to the board that they authorize the initiation of an enforcement action, at which time, depending on what the nature of the problem is, it would more likely than not go to the municipal court seeking a per diem sanction. But if we do have some kind of a health issue, public safety issue, then to initiate injunctive action in the circuit court, simply because the most that the municipal court can do is impose a fine on violators. It can be substantial, but then that doesn't solve the immediate problem. It just gives the village the opportunity to try to then foreclose on that judgment, which is going to cost additional money and going to take time.
So do we know if the chief of police and the building inspector, I will note that, council is here representing the party in question, but do we know, did the police chief and the building inspector go visit that site?
I have no knowledge of this.
Then me.
yeah, they did. They called me while they were there on site. So, and the timing was good, because if I may, I had just earlier spoken with Attorney K, here representing HM Brands. And Attorney K had represented to me that, you know, hey, be aware that Creative Disposal Inc. is one of about 5 different contractors that are using this AFW Foundry back parcel as a contractor storage yard. So a couple hours later, coincidentally, the building inspector and the police chief were checking it out, and I relayed that to them, and they said, yeah, that's pretty accurate. There's a lot of different companies' equipment back there. So what we had kind of speculated was 2 things. No one, and Attorney K offered to put a plan of operation together and get it into the packet for that operation for tonight's meeting. I asked him to hold off, because what we need from the plan commission is input on, you know, is the more appropriate thing to have AFW Foundry put together a plan of operation. And again, I'll go back to that multi-tenant building type scenario.
Yeah.
If they're going to let, you know, on a temporary basis or a limited time basis, multiple contractors use that same spot, then I think it's more appropriate to have AFW Foundry hold the plan of operation for that. So the history on this parcel is it used to be for arborists. And then when Ross Barnacle was operating that, he had sold to AFW Foundry. Later Rothschild ceased, and I think it was always just. Best case scenario was always just presumed that, oh, that was approved as a contractor storage yard. They can just keep leasing it out as a contractor storage yard. But the police chief and the building inspector told them, AFW, that AFW will need to come back for a plan of operation. So I guess what's in question is, in this case, do you want every contractor that's using that site to have a plan of operation? I would suggest maybe not. Just because there are so many different contractors that could be operating, sharing space, etc. Or solely rely on AFW Foundry to have a plan of operation that would govern them and how they intend to store materials on site or let people store materials on site, what materials they intend to allow, disallow, etc.
Mr. President, if I may be recognized, I can add a few comments. Now, who owns this property?
AFW Foundry.
Okay, so your client doesn't own the property yet? It's just a couple of points of clarification. So first of all, my name is Attorney Alexander Kay. Mr. Michael Brandt is to my left, the Cheyenne Brandt, also Brandt, just so everyone is aware of who's here. And so the property is owned by AFW Foundry, and they lease it to Creative Disposal, not HM Brandt, which is a separate entity that's at issue here. And there's about 5 other tenants that are in that back parcel. So I wasn't aware that a complaint was filed, so I haven't reviewed it at all, so I can't confirm or deny that the complaint was based on Creative Disposal, because my guess is that there's 5 other tenants back there and it's everyone's stuff. So whoever made the complaint drove back and saw a bunch of stuff, and I just want to make a point to the planning commission that it's probably not all of HM Brandt's stuff that's back there.
So Mr. Brandt, you don't own Creative Disposal, right? That's a different entity, or is that part of your umbrella of companies?
It's a sister company.
Sister company. So the Brandt family does own both HM Brandt and Creative Disposal. Okay, thank you.
That's correct. So the discussion I had with engineer Ben Wood was, we proposed, should we put a plan of operation in for today? He goes, hold off, let the planning commission give you guidance on whether the property owner should be having the sole plan of operation, or B, whether the tenants should all 5 of them should be submitting a plan of operation, or I can see whether the property owner and the 5 tenants, so you guys want 6 plans of operation. So we're happy to do our piece of the pie, but we don't control AFW and we don't control the other 4 tenants. So we're happy to do what you guys want. And we just need some guidance on what you guys want. Now, I think what we need is what Ben Wood recommended, is that really the property owner, they're the kingpin of the property. They should be the ones who have the initial plan of operation. And then if you guys want more plans of operations, we're happy to do them. It just depends on how many plans of operations you guys want and how we want to review.
I like to clarify, I'm the one that wrote the complaint. This is based on something that's gonna happen later tonight, where Attorney Kay provided us with a list of names of addresses and of driveways, paved lots and stuff like that. So I drove around because I have a list of all the driveways that I know that need to be done, which I've turned into the village, and I know of 3 businesses. Well, in my driving around, I noticed a sign that says Woodland Road East, which I don't remember that one ever becoming on how that became a village road. And like this, I drove back, and that's when I saw HMM Brandt vehicles. I did notice the Creative. I didn't write Creative name on here because I just went quickly. But what really caught my eye is a pile of shingles. I do notice that Creative now has hauled in a lot of trucks of concrete rubble the last couple of days, and they must have a pretty good pile back there. So I'm just waiting for when that crushing machine starts to crush, because that's a violation. You can't crush in the village without a permit. You can't crush in that's in light industrial, so you can't crush there, unless it's in the quarry. So this should be AFW's plan of operation. It should be on their plan of operation that they are going to run a yard and they're gonna allow, and we would have told AFW. There's no storage of shingles piled like that. And if that goes up in flames, that's gonna smoke for a long time in this town. There's no crushing, and right now, when them trucks are going back there the last couple of days. Monday and Tuesday, maybe it was Tuesday and Wednesday, let's see, Thursday, Monday and Tuesday. When they would turn around back there, they had a cloud of dust going up, so we would be requiring that be probably. Controlled with, same thing we had Jack Muss Trucking do, we had Jack Muss Trucking put down reclaimed asphalt. Because the big trucks will tear up everything else, but they put down reclaimed, never had a dust problem, never had a complaint, and that would be a requirement. That you're gonna hear later on tonight, also in another location. So this is why I wrote the complaint, was I've observed this when I was going around town, checking out these driveways. And that's why this is on the agenda, so yeah, it should be AFW, and I think everything that's down there needs to be. Well, we need to get on the AFW, get on their case now, to get it.
Well, is AFW receiving the monies from the people, the dumpings that are being placed there? Who's getting the money for the dumpings?
Okay, can I just say a couple things? First of all, the concrete pile is there, okay? In order for us to crush that so that we can make the elevation and the grade more stable, they use that material there on site.
Right, but see,
Okay.
this is,
Recycling. Number two, recycle the shingle pile. It's the same thing. We recycle it and then material goes to the asphalt plants. They mix it in with the asphalt. It's recycling.
Also not fun.
It's not flammable. It's roof.
right, I also noticed there's some nails on Good Hope too, where it goes into that place back there, but the thing is, what I'm saying is that. We don't know that AFW is elevating their parking area and they're grading all that stuff. I mean, the whole can of worms, I mean,
There's nothing being graded. There's simply stone being
So-
added.
Hector, you.
Exactly what you're saying is to.
An existing yard for.
Well,
Let's not get, we're not, okay, we're not gonna get into it back and forth. Yeah. let's-
Yeah.
I think there's a community-wide recognition that the character of this community is moving more in the direction of its current master plan. Basically to be predominantly a residential community. I noted that in the subsequent matter that we have an application from the grant company that the application is basically to do everything similar to what everybody else is doing. And that's my general characterization. We'll get into the specifics. The village has had enforcement issues with storage yard. And we've had that with regards to the storage of vehicles, quarries, which really don't have any connection as such. And the village has minimal staff to police these things. And it seems to me, from what I've heard, that AFW Boundary is basically running a large rental storage facility without regulating it, monitoring it, or at the very least, letting the village know what the heck is going on there. So my recommendation is different than that. I do believe that there's a need for outside storage. It's at a premium because now we're not on the outskirts of the metropolitan area, and these spaces are very hard to find. But in fairness to Mr. Grant, given the questions that have been raised with regard to the property that he's contemplating buying, the village, my recommendation, the village should refine its process to control outside storage by requiring entities like AFW Foundry to file a plan of operation and to compel each party that's going to be using that facility to file a plan of operation, specify the territory where they're gonna be, specify the stuff that's going to be kept there, so that we don't have any discrepancies as to whether shingles are gonna be there, whether they are flammable or not, whether they present some kind of health issues, probably not. But to reassure the people, because we are becoming a residential community. So that's my recommendation. Yes, it's gonna be more paperwork. Yes, it's gonna slow down people, but at the same time, it gives the building inspector a frame of reference. There's supposed to be 5 entities doing 5 different things, or 3 similar things, 2 different things. What's their territory and how are they operating it? Because otherwise, where do we begin? How do we begin to enforce a setting such as the one that's the subject of this complaint?
Yeah, I concur.
So it sounds like the guidance from the council is that the landlord and all the tenants should go back and resubmit. They're each in their own plan of operation. So HM Grants and or Creative Disposal, they'll submit one of the 6. And then the other 5 tenants and AFW, they'll have to submit their own.
Well, we'll make that determination here shortly.
I'm just recommending here.
And for example, I mean, to talk to specifics, Mr. Brandt, if the foundry puts a plan of operation and they say that we are gonna be leasing space to entities and they're going to be coming in and out with dumpsters. And maybe we say, we're not gonna allow you to empty those trucks onto the parking lot. You can put it there overnight until you take it to the asphalt plant, or let's say you decide that you want to have a crushing operation. Now you have to come and you have to ask permission. You have to say what hours I'm going to do this, how long am I going to do it for? You know, it's not a continuous thing. It's just enough to fill all the potholes in the back thing. We have no problem working with you, but we have to know what's going on. I mean, there just has to be some rails there, because otherwise everyone will just do everything.
And I'm glad Commissioner Grimm followed up on the list of 24 sites that was sparked by the other project, and now HM Grant, we're improving the village over there, over here, and all over. So you know,
It's not that we don't want your business, we just want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
So,
So,
because I don't even, I don't even know if Ashford Arborist is in business anymore. I'm not sure, I
We
mean,
bought the company.
and on that topic, I talked to Ben. I'm not sure how much discussion you have or haven't had with the Plan Commission, but it's my understanding that it was Ashford Arborist. You guys bought the business, asked the purchase agreement. His name was Ross, and Ben said, "Oh, well, you can't use Ross's anymore because they're a new business. Can you go back and get it from Ross?" I said, "Well, it's my understanding that Ross has passed away, so we are no longer able to ask him." I think you were in the process of sending that to me. So once we get that, we'll use that and basically resubmit it on a updated basis, whatever needs to be updated.
All these years that we've been back there, I never knew that we had to have a different plan of operation.
well, and that's,
I never knew that.
I think the point that council was trying to make is that we put that onus on AFW, the actual property owner.
We have a lease
And
agreement with them.
it's their responsibility to make sure that their tenants or any sublessees are aware of the process and how to navigate through the process and what restrictions might come along with leasing that space. So this goes to just clean that up and clarify things a little bit more.
so you were actually sneaking by for a long time, under my eye, until, you're.
No, we weren't trying to sneak.
No, but I'm
We
just
never
saying-
knew we were doing anything wrong.
You
to be
weren't,
honest.
see, the thing was, is you were never crushing before either. I don't
No,
think.
we
Just started,
just did that, just.
and
so
that,
we would
that,
have
that tipped me
material.
off too, because I'll tell you, I live on Good Hope on a hill. And I saw the dust going in the air and I'm going. I wasn't putting two and two together, and then all of a sudden, the notice, you know, the thing came out
Like,
about the
it's not
driveway.
like we're trying to hide it.
No, but
At
I
all.
knew, because I knew there used to be bark back there
There
everywhere,
was
so
bark and
bark
we
don't make
removed
dust.
all of that bark.
Okay.
And we stripped off the asphalt, not the asphalt, the topsoil, cleaned that whole place up. There was 40 years of junk, if you want to call it that. And we're still working on cleaning it up. We hauled out, I want to say about 40 dumpster loads of debris to either the landfill or to the recycle facility. Because all we're trying to do is clean the place up, make it a usable site for different people.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, we're getting off the rails here a little bit, so let's get back on topic, please. So the item that we're discussing is this complaint. And I think that we have an opportunity here, if I'm understanding you correctly, that we could make a decision, a policy decision here about how we want to handle these things going forward. I personally, even though there's some administrative burden, I am in favor of the more layered approach to this, and the AFW as the property owner has the master plan of operation, if you will, and then any subsequent parties would have their own plan of operation, with that very clearly defined operating area within that space. That's my preference, so I don't know if anybody else has any disagrees with that or has any different thoughts.
Who's ever getting the rent should ultimately, I totally
they're-
agree with you,
they're
should
responsible.
ultimately, you know, because then if one of their tenants does something that causes a complaint to be filed or violates a rule, regulation, or ordinance, you have somebody to go to for enforcement.
And I think that's the same thing we do down here on, the storage facility. Next to me.
There's the ultimate landlord.
There's the ultimate landlord.
Circle S.
Circle it.
Some tenants don't do it.
So,
You know, if you're in.
And as far as
If
the
they do-
complaint goes, as Hector noted, the police chief and the inspector went and notified them of what ordinances they were in breach of. They have 30 days to rectify that, and then it goes no further as long as they are compliant at that point. And then we have talked about other things that if you didn't, you know, we would go down that road, but I mean, I think we've satisfied that. That path. There is no longer an open pile of roofing in the lot.
Yeah, it's in a containment and we grind it and turn it to a fine material that goes to asphalt plants.
The recycling.
It's a recycling operation.
But is recycling a euphemistic word for a changing the character of materials without getting approval? Is recycling?
There's no ordinance in the village of Lannon, and there's no state ordinance for recycling shingles. It's a new concept within our state. It's actually a pilot program which different companies are trying and putting in their asphalt to see. There's actually state highways that are built with recycled shingles in it. Okay, because we're trying to recycle, keep stuff out of our landfills, okay? I would certainly think that Lannon would want to be on the forefront of recycling.
Nobody is passing judgment.
Well, we're calling it the B and it's not,
Please allow me.
yes.
Nobody is passing judgment on recycling. What judgment is being expressed is that the village needs to know that this is going on.
And we're all,
And
we're all about it.
and the problem is that nobody, neither the owner or the other parties that are doing recycling has notified the village.
And we fully intend to do that.
So I would recommend that for the time being, the complaint be tabled for a period of 30 days from now. Now that we've had this discussion, so that the clerk can formally notify AFW Foundry of the motion that I recommend that the board pass, excuse me, the plan commission pass. And that is that any property owner, whether it's a building or a strip mall, that property owner file a plan of operation. And then when a tenant comes in, that each individual tenant file a plan of operation. We have the example of the strip mall here where a gun shop basically went in. And the village was concerned about safety issues, crashed through, and so forth. And that was worked out. Nobody wants anybody to fail, but when a complaint comes in and we don't even know what's going on, what can we do but to investigate and then bring the matter here? We can avoid that by having the property owner file the plan of operation. Are you in agreement with that?
And for the Brads, we're in agreement as well. We want to let you guys know, we want to work with you. So whatever your policy is, we want to work with the village. So once a motion is made and you guys offer guidance, we'll do our part. And then I guess the last comment on the tabling of the complaint, I guess. The question is, since I haven't seen it or reviewed it, is the complaint, okay, great, thank you. Is the complaint explicitly against one of the tenants or all 5 of the tenants and the 5 tenants and the property owner?
As I read it, it pertains to the site and the activity.
So everybody. I just want to make sure we're not being singled out.
See, I listed it as the name of property owner is AFW Foundry of Wisconsin. And I also noted the LANV number, so when Brenda pulls it up, she will address it to the people in Chicago.
Good.
Not the one here, because it's the Chicago one that's on that certificate. And when it says it appears, and then I wrote down HMN brand, so that's one of them. And when I said there's a roofing debris pile, okay, I said debris, that doesn't mean debris. It means a pile of used shingles. It's a debris pile. Okay, you can call it, they're gonna recycle it. I don't know that it's a height, okay? Now, a little hint, when you do your plan of operation, bring in all this recycling information that's the forefront and leading all that, so we know what the process is gonna be, how much noise, all that stuff, how much, what it's gonna create, so, you know, that's why I say it's a fire hazard, because anything that's got oil in it, which shingles do, could be a potential fire. That's why I listed as fire potential. And then
It's all contained in kind of
But-
barriers. All
right,
around.
I know that, but
Yeah.
still, if it starts, okay,
Yeah.
and then we have a crushing ordinance in this town, so.
So I think there's possibly a misinterpretation here that you're specifically being targeted. That's not the case. Secondly, I think what's getting lost in the noise is that while Len has done things a certain way for a very long time, and to your point, you've never had this issue before. I get all that. But I think as council has alluded to, the time has come that we have started to try to clean up or tighten up some of these types of things. And, so this commission's going to hear and deal with these types of challenges for a while, I think, as we deal with some enforcement and some policy changes here going forward. It's not personal. It's not targeted at anybody in particular. It's about making this village a better, cleaner, safer place to live. And that's all it is.
And that's what we're doing with that property. Making it cleaner, safer and better for the
Good,
village.
we appreciate that. Let's do it together. We have,
I will make a motion to table the complaint form in order to give the clerk time to address that complaint. To make a request for a plan of operation of Aluminum Foundry of Wisconsin and their parent company. Is that right? Did I do that right?
And the tenants.
And yes,
And-
plan of operation for AF Aluminum Foundry of Wisconsin, and any subleasers of that property.
The only problem is how would the clerk know who the tenants are when we don't have it on file who AFW has as tenants?
So I think what we do is, again, the onus falls back on the property owner.
Yep.
It is their responsibility to notify us of any change in lessee.
Mhm.
And if it comes to any enforcement action for an operation that we discover back there that has not been disclosed, then they are at risk. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now let's move on to the meaty stuff here. Item number 11, discussion and possible action regarding the plan of operation for HM Grant LLC for parcels LANB 0067965, LANB 00679650001, and LANB 00679650002, located at approximately 20151 West Main Street. You're up, Mr. Wood.
Okay, so each of these items is kind of. The next three agenda items are first, the plan of operation. Secondly, the special use permit. Third, the rezone. So one blanket comment that applies to all is that it's a contractor storage yard, as we discussed at past meetings. It's all the actions should be conditioned upon the rezoning of the property. So right now it's a legal non-conforming use because it's currently operating as and has been operating as a contractor storage yard, but it's under B2 zoning and Q. So the intent here is that all their review assumes that all of my comments assume that it is indeed ultimately rezoned to light industrial. So they have followed the past direction of the plan commission, and they've gone ahead and submitted that rezone application. At a prior meeting, the plan commission approved their plan of operation to operate out of the offices and the inside of the buildings, but no kind of use of the sites until they submitted an application as such. As part of the full package, they did get a signed consent form from the current property owner to whom they have an offer to purchase pending. So with that, on the plan of operation specifically, I have a handful of comments in my letter here. I guess generally sections A through D, the application is filled out as if the company is still leasing the space. Given my review here that it's under the assumption that they own it, I feel those should be retooled as if they're the owner. And then it just get approved, conditioned on them owning the property and getting it appropriately rezoned. Section E, I think the description of the business should explicitly include contractor storage yard. I believe they list, storage of certain equipment, et cetera. I get it. I think we should just, for clarity's sake, also list contractor storage yard. I believe the property is or should be connected to municipal water. I know there's a water lateral to it, so that would just be something to double check. The applicant should double check. Section F, verify that these hours actually reflect the hours that the site will be occupied, not just the business hours. It's pretty common comments. They did make mention of a sign on this application. There's a separate sign permit process, and I just suggest rather, I believe they applied saying that they're going to reuse the existing signs in the existing location and just paint the artwork. That's all well and good, but I think the details of that should be, I don't want to give them like kind of implied or vicarious approval on this form. There's a separate sign permit that you would follow up with when you have the artwork, et cetera.
And all the conditions that you went through, A through E, we're okay with through them. Those are all very minor. We can get you an updated plan of operation, those are not big items, and we're happy to comply with all of them.
Great. And the rest of my comments have to do with the specific site plan. Note on the plan of operation, there's an area where they list C containers. I'm assuming that those are what we would refer to as shipping containers, and there is a specific ordinance for shipping containers. The ordinance section here is listed in the comments that requires a separate permit for shipping containers unless the plan commission has provided separate approvals. Note again that the next item is a special use permit, and presumably this is a special use permit would be a mechanism under which the plan commission could provide quote unquote separate approval for shipping containers. So they show generically an area of the yard that would be designated for these containers, and I think we would typically want to understand more specifically a quantity of shipping containers, the dimensions of the containers, etc. And again, I say in here, like normally a shipping container permit is good for up to 6 months, but I think the plan commission could allow that for a longer duration, given that the mechanism of the special use permit. I'll say my opinion, and I would expect the plan commission to have its own opinion. My opinion is that they are improving the screening of the site substantially. Even from the bug line trail, which I think is appreciated. They're planning to add some arborvitae or some type of evergreen along the bug line trail. They only have 70 feet of frontage, which is essentially the gate. It's going to be a screened gate. The rest of the site is pretty heavily wooded with existing kind of just woods. So all of that as a baseline understanding, I think their shipping containers are a valid use along with the contractor storage yard, and I think they're going to be adequately screened. I don't personally care if they keep them there for 6 months or 6 years or 60 years, but it should just be handled through the special use permit, I believe. Next on the drainage, I know that the applicant was quite curious, quite interested to know what about the drainage situation. So here's kind of the catch-22 a little bit. It all depends on the extent of land disturbing activity, which is all going to depend on whether or not the plan commission intends to make them pave any greater of an area than what is currently paved. I know Commissioner Graham had indicated that the extents of paving were approved by a previous plan commission, and whether the commission decides to make them pave more or not is going to have everything to do with how much impervious area or land disturbing activity they take on. If they take on more land disturbing activity, then they're probably going to have a stormwater management plan and a pond probably somewhere on the south portion of the site. But as it stands right now, if they are not disturbing more than an acre, etc., they don't need to comply with the stormwater management ordinance. Building plans, the area of the building on the entire site should be clearly noted on the plans. I did find later on that is shown on their CSM, which is part of the whole site plan submittal. We require floor plans and elevations of existing buildings. You know, in a situation like this, I believe we've accepted photographs of the exterior of the building and just general dimensions. You don't necessarily have to go out and hire an architect to draw what's exactly there. But I believe interior floor plans need to be submitted. Parking and paving. I kind of just dive into with my comments here, everything that I just explained. Section 5831 talks about parking and paving and says all areas of the site used for ingress, egress, parking, loading, and maneuvering of vehicles needs to be paved. So currently Only a portion of the entrance into the site is paved and the area for the back building that's used for maneuvering around there is not paved. I have not been back there. At some point, the site, my understanding, transitions into like literally exposed bedrock. Is my understanding accurate?
Yeah,
Like it's not even, it probably goes from pavement to gravel at some point.
yeah,
to
it's
bedrock.
partway past the office building.
Yeah,
And then it turns to all stone or limestone. And then on the backside of the shop building,
yeah,
it turns into bedrock or mud.
okay,
And that area where it's mud, obviously, we're gonna take mud out, put stone in there.
okay,
You don't have no mud going out.
okay,
And then on the east side of the property line is Hopewell Stone.
right,
So it's,
right.
Yeah,
I mean, we're talking bedrock
Right.
on rock on stone. on-
Understood.
yeah, I mean, it's a couple inches at best.
It's the Flintstones.
Yeah, I mean, it's
So the intent here,
Solid ground.
I think the intent here, which kind of came up on the last agenda item is dust control and tracking of mud or whatever out on the road. So, you know, the plan commission has a spectrum of which they could interpret and apply this. Again, as we talked about on the Betty Ann's building across the way here. The plan commission does have flexibility in applying some of like the parking and loading requirements. And as it goes with the, say at the end of my paragraph here, ordinance section 5831G affords the plan commission some discretion in the assessments of applicability of paving requirements. So a determination on that really needs, that's important for the plan commission to figure out tonight. Later on, we'll get into the rezoning has to go to public hearing. Always part of the rezoning is the site plan, et cetera. So neighbors that are interested can see what's going to happen. So your input tonight gives them an opportunity to address your comments and then, you know, present at the public hearing in even better detail what they intend to do there. Let's see. Landscaping, they're pretty much rolling with the existing plus the addition of some landscaping screening, which I talked about before. The ordinances and the underlying intent of the ordinances is to maximize natural areas. A lot of the property is bordered by wooded areas, etc. I think it would be a little ridiculous to try to apply any typical like parking lot landscaping standards here. I think that the plan they put forth is reasonable, given the site layout, site use, etc. And perhaps that particular orientation could be something memorialized in the special use permit. Screening and fencing, I just want them to indicate the materials of the planned privacy screening on the gate. So this is a bit of a unique situation again, in that they only have 70 feet of frontage. But that 70 feet of frontage being on the south side of the bud line is just kind of on the extent of the limits of this kind of like downtown design guideline standard or whatever. Personally, I want to make sure they don't end up with some cattywampus privacy slats like you see over on Good Hope Road as you're coming into town that aren't even trimmed off to the appropriate length. Obviously, I wouldn't expect you guys to do that. You conduct yourselves much more professionally, but I would just like to know more details on, you know, what exactly that screening is. I don't even know if something like that would pop up as something in the downtown plan. I don't think we're gonna make you do wrought iron fences with the Mr. Burns initials on front of it per se, but just want to know specifics about what you do independently. Those are my comments for the plan of operations and safety.
The only couple comments I have is. One is, you're gonna have bushes there by the office and the picnic tables. are you gonna have some sort of fencing from the gate up to the office there, so people on the floodline will say, oh, place they eat picnic at?
But
You know, where you got the picnic tables on your little drawing here?
Yeah.
Are you gonna have some sort of fencing from the gate area back towards the office, backside of the office? So people riding on the floodline won't see the picnic tables, think that's a place.
no,
to
I want to have the people from the bug line be able to use those picnic
Okay,
tables.
Okay,
And I proposed, I believe it was to one of the board members that is on the park, that it would be nice to be able to let the people spend some, clean that up and make it a spot where they could rest if they'd like.
okay,
Put a sign up there, you know, about land and put the place for them to, you know, go over to the BP and get a soda or a water or something, be able to sit down and rest for a few minutes, or change their baby's diaper, or many different options.
okay,
We would love to be able to do that
okay. So
in
then,
the community.
okay, so then now, I'd like to have a little bit more detail, if you're gonna have any kind of lighting out in the lot area.
There's a light out there that's on a pole,
So that's, okay.
and there's, I think, a couple, 2-3 lights on the building, but to be honest with you, I don't know if they work. We don't technically own the property yet, so I can't just go there and cut the grass like I would like to. We
So-
did take, and I got a hold of the contractor that took and ripped up the whole front grass. And I asked them, you know, look, we're trying to buy this property. This looks like an eyesore. There's mud out on the road for you guys. Can you come and clean it up? And they were, after many phone calls, came and re-topsoiled that front lawn that was all ripped up and whatnot. And reseeded it and all that, okay? But it's, right now, it's limited what we can do. It's a mess back there. There's junk everywhere. We want to come in and be able to clean it up.
So then I would like to see you then add to your site plan in the future, any lighting that's gonna be back there once you get the pole working. But, you know, I said at the previous meeting that where the asphalt had gone back so far to the first office building, I would like to see the rest of the area have that reclaimed asphalt for dust control reasons. You could have, you know, it could be stone, but stone turns to dust. And if you put the asphalt down, even if it's solid rock, if the asphalt's there, it's gonna control any kind
Can I
of dust.
mention something? We crush asphalt regularly.
So then you have
Okay,
no
we
problem.
take and put it in a paver, and that's exactly what we do.
So-
And we get paid from customers to do it.
So there'd be no problem then
No.
to do that reclaiming in that lot for that is what I'd be looking for. And you know, those are just a couple of things I would be recommending.
Ben, did you have something to add to that?
Just while we're back on the picnic tables here. Where the tables are shown right now are behind the gated area. And I would just be worried about kind of encouraging foot traffic to come behind the gate and see what's going on. So I might just suggest kind of either moving the gate back a little bit or flip-flopping the location of picnic tables so they're on the outside of the gate or something to that effect.
Yep, no problem.
And we can do that really easy.
Because that's why I was wondering if the gate was coming back, but then when you said, no, it's gonna be open to the public, but you know. You're getting people back there walking around and they're, oh, there's nobody here, you know, even though you might have, I know you have cameras. I've seen cameras, I smile,
They're everywhere.
yeah, so, but I would just, for safety's sake, I wouldn't want. The public kind of like walking around in your property, you know.
Yeah, so. Back to the gate, and not to make this more monumental than it needs to be, but. According to the drawing I'm seeing, this is really just intended to be a deterrent from vehicle traffic, right? It's simply, you're looking at a couple of posts on each side of the drive and. A gate that's gonna move back and forth electronically, and there's really no extent. Of a fence or any kind of containment beyond those posts, correct?
It's all natural.
Yeah, okay.
And in the area where where the picnic tables are right now, that was planned to put more arborvitaes. If it would be, you know, we can switch those picnic tables to the, I guess that would be what?
I just wanted
north?
to understand the
Or
intent there of the.
Well, north, and put those in, you know, make an area for people to, you know, including our employees that work in office, they get somewhere they can go out and sit down in a nice area. You know, that would be seen from the street as well, not just the buggy line.
Right.
But, you know,
Right,
the
that's-
intent is to just, you know. The property's really shielded from the street already, just naturally, and the way it's designed, but to put that gate and fence across the front. We just have to put the fence in a way that we're not. Deterrent from being able to use the scale that's there. It's because there is a scale that is on the property.
The only comment I might make about that then is, you know, perhaps you could strategically place a few arborvitae. The one side kind of has some natural growth there already, but this other side of this is just gonna be a post sticking out there in the middle of nothing. Maybe if you ran
It's gonna go
some.
right up to the building.
You have to look to the plan.
The
plan has it further forward.
Yeah, not
Okay.
according to this.
well, we can, I mean, we can adjust it to where you want it.
No, I mean, I think it's fine where it is, but I was just suggesting along that arc on the south end, maybe you do. You know, 3 or 4 arborvitae along that, just to kind of break that up visually.
I don't know how far we can get down the plant,
Yeah.
to be honest with you,
Yeah,
because
right.
really, to be honest with you, everything there is naturally growing, and I don't know how many years it's been growing.
Right.
There is a couple small bushes right around the building, but I dug a couple test holes around there. And literally, the stone, the bedrock is 2-3 inches at best.
Yeah,
It
but
takes some
So-
farming.
You know, that could work. That could work.
Okay.
I don't know how that would affect. You know, roots going under the bug line trail or into the foundation of the building or.
Well, this would be like 20 feet away, probably from anything else.
You're talking about that, the property line next to the bug line, is that where you're
No.
referring to, where you're
Talking
talking about
about
the other side?
down like
By the,
here,
yeah.
somewhere to
You're talking
Yeah,
about
yeah.
along,
break up this great gate along the drive.
Well, Mr. Brandt and I have had conversations about that little corner that would be right nestled up along West Main Street and the bug line. That little triangle that's up in there, and I've got grandiose plans for it, and the Brandt family has indicated that they'd be willing to work with the village to create maybe like a little train depot sort of shelter area to get out of the sun, pump up your bike tire and get water. So I don't know if we can move forward with our recommendations on the use of this property without those details all being hammered out right now.
And I would like to think that we could, and hopefully with just the understanding that. You know, this area north of the entrance and to the west of the existing office building. There will be some further discussions about how the village and HM Grant might be able to work together to.
Absolutely.
Create a community space and whether or not that.
And everything else is his business.
And whether or not that might require any type of easement or something or whatever, but yes. Ben.
So just procedurally, since this is all contingent on them owning the land and getting it rezoned. You know, my suggestion is the planning commission, give them feedback between now and the public hearing, they make any not reservations. Revisions that they feel appropriate, that they want to take into account.
Yep.
And then final action on these things will be after the public hearing. So
So we've got some time to.
we're right on track with the process. And
Yeah, I think it's our understanding that tonight you would approve it contingent upon the public hearing.
Yep.
And then upon final vote, which would be the first meeting after the public hearing. And the reason why we're kind of in this three-phase meeting, so we'll call this phase one, public hearing 2, and then your final vote will be phase 3, is that these guys got an offer to purchase and we amended it to push it back. So we understand that that's not your problem, but our seller is putting the pressure on us to say, hey, figure this out or. Do this.
Right, and at the last meeting, we kind of Ben helped us set up a timeline where tonight we would make the recommendation to the board would have the hearing immediately before the village meeting, so that then the village can act on it at the next meeting. So we are sensitive to trying to move this along as quickly as possible. It did require the public notice that took at least 3 weeks between the public notice and the hearing.
So the hearing is scheduled for the 12th.
Right. Yep, and notice has been made.
Yep, we provided a list of all the properties within 300 feet and.
Mhm.
And for what it's worth, your interaction would be with 4 locals. We're here in Wisconsin, Washington County. Your current sellers or owners are in Pennsylvania and they don't care, they're not here. And so,
Right, at our last meeting, you hadn't even been able to make contact with him.
right, so we're going
Made progress.
through our broker, through their broker, and they're a big corporation in Pennsylvania, so. We're locals just like you guys, we're not out in Pennsylvania.
So if I understand you, Brendan, tonight we're just basically looking at the plan of operation and saying, hey, this is the 2 or 3 items that we like to see fixed, that way it could be approved after the public hearing that night.
Yeah, I want to say we've done this 2 different ways. So the last time we would have been in a similar situation would have been with, say, like Land and Stone Products and Hallquist Stone. And they came through with their big packages of PUD agreement, plan of operation, revision, conditional use permit. And I believe the plan of operation technically could be approved conditionally. If that's meaningful to the applicant. It could also be just recommended or tabled for further action until after the public hearing. On the village's procedural side, the timeline is exactly the same, the steps are the exact same. So it's just a matter of whether or not it's meaningful to get some conditional approval or not. I don't.
We would prefer that it be approved contingent upon meeting staff's recommendations set forth. This thing, that way we can go back and show some good faith, say, we've got it. Approved contingent upon staff's recommendations, and if you guys want to make further recommendations. That's fine, but some type of approval contingent upon satisfying the further recommendations. Would be our preference.
Just for the plan of operation only. Not for the special use, not for the rezone.
Yeah, because we haven't even discussed the sea container, so I'll make a motion to approve the plan of operation contingent on. First off, no further discussion on this sea container storage. That the stone area of the parking lot be covered with reclaimed asphalt, Control does. They submit floor plans, interior floor plans.
What do we, what?
Floor plan, Mr. Benwood was saying, photos would be sufficient.
We're not changing anything.
Exterior. It's just.
You just draw inside the building, just draw a square, put in a door, the window, here's the bathroom area, or, just so.
It's a standard.
Standard requirement that we have an interior,
It's got to be drawn to scale.
Yeah.
Show the rooms, show the exits.
it's like, we had one earlier tonight where I held it up for the guy to put the lights on it. That's what he did, was he had to scale the square of the building and then,
Yeah, a little bit of the problem with that, I'm not trying to say we're not doing it, okay? We don't own the property, so we
Right,
can't just go in there.
right, but see, that can be satisfied later. Too, I mean, it's contingent, okay, so that's, we could. Once you own it, all these contingencies go away.
Kind of like as you meet the conditions, then your approval takes effect. It doesn't mean necessarily that you have to come back here.
But once you close, you can go in and submit a hand-drawn sketch with a ruler, but not a full architect.
Because you can't put the parking lot in, or all the driving area in until you own it. So that's why I'm saying it's contingent upon. But you can go to wherever you need to go to and say, okay, well, yeah, we got approval. You know, we got some minor things that we have to finish after we close. You know. I mean, it's not like we're saying, well, no, you can't come back. If you come back, we're not saying, well, no, now we're gonna give you a whole new list. No. This is, in my book, this is the end of the list.
Okay, so just so I'm on track with you, Mike, I've got more info on the sea containers, pre-ground asphalt, building interior drawings. These are the conditions.
And no
No.
sign until they submit a sign permit.
What about lighting? You wanna have lighting?
To show, they'll have to show lighting to, eventually, yes, to show lighting.
And then what about, Mr. Wood's, plan of operation comments? He also had in there that section E should include the contractor storage yard designation in addition to.
The lawyer already said that, they'll rewrite A through E what goes.
So point of order here, we have a motion.
Yeah.
Put forth here,
Yes.
so are you finished with your motion?
Yes, I was finished.
Okay, do we have a second?
Yep.
Okay, all right, now we can talk.
Okay.
Sorry.
I
Now I'm
think
done.
one of the conditions should be addressing comments in the staff reports as Attorney Kay had mentioned earlier.
I amended that.
We have an amended motion.
I'll second the amended motion.
We have an amended second. Any further discussion or things to consider? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Item number 12. Discussion and possible action regarding a special use permit for H.M. Brand LLC for parcels LANB 0067965, LANB 00679650001, and LANB 00679650002, located at approximately 20151 West Main Street.
So I'll start with my comments, if that's all right.
Please.
Technically, the ordinance requires the light industrial zoning district allows contractors storage yards as a special use. I think it's been brought up before, and the Plan Commission should discuss that this requirement is not always upheld. However, I think it's put staff in a bit of an awkward situation in that, staff does not have the authority to waive the requirements of the ordinances. Right? Like, you all are the governing body. I think there was a period of time, presumably, where special use permits for various reasons were not really required of contractor storage yards. I can only assume that one of those reasons is that the contents of the special use permit are somewhat redundant to the contents of the plan of operation, site plan standards, structure standards for industrial properties. Nonetheless, I think, as I previously outlined in my comments, there are a couple of nuanced things about this application, and presumably about any application, that could benefit from having a special use permit. So that particular example is the shipping container, right? Like if the Plan Commission governs the shipping containers on this site specific to this operation and specific to this site, it doesn't necessarily have to worry about the whole shipping container permitting process. So I think that's important to have on here. I just put in my comments a handful, well, not a handful, the items that are required in the ordinance as contents of special use permit. Again, a lot of these are redundant to a plan of operation. A certified survey map that has been provided in this packet. A copy of deed restrictions. I'm not aware that there's any deed restrictions that are going to be required by the zoning code for this project, for this property, for this operation. Dimensions of all buildings on the lot actually were included on the CSM. Location of any easements. The CSM document specifically indicates that a title search was not conducted, so easements are not shown. So presumably that will come to light through just the property transaction process. So if there are any easements on the property, those should be identified. Again, that's redundant information to a plan of operation anyways. The dimensions of the setbacks need to be added to the site plan. Location of proposed driveways and widths are already shown on the plan. Here's another specific instance of where a special use permit might be helpful. The minimum lot width for B2 is 150 feet. For LI, which they're seeking, is 100 feet, and what they actually have is 70 feet. So a special use permit can in effect memorialize, like, yes, everyone's okay with that reduced kind of frontage width or lot width. Detailed building plans similar to plan of operation need to be provided. And here it's just kind of catch-all, any other information required by the zoning administrator, building inspector, or plan commission. I just added a written narrative has been provided. I find it kind of ironic. Sorry, Attorney K, I find it kind of ironic that some of the responses in the special use permit narrative say we're going to use this consistent with other similar uses. Is kind of counter to the definition of a special use permit. So I would like to see the narrative if they feel that there's anything like really special to this project, such as the shipping containers, that those things be outlined. So I don't think that they're far off. Again, this whole thing is kind of a whole package. Special use does not require a public hearing, whereas a conditional use does. So that should be noted. Well, it doesn't need to be noted anywhere. I just want everyone to be aware of that. The other thing here explicit to a special use permit is that it's reviewable every 24 months. And again, I can only imagine this is maybe why the planning commission was kind of fell out of requiring special use permits, because I think that's also generally true of plan of operations where they're kind of, you know, if there's a complaint received that someone's not following their plan of operation, they get called in to review it. Very similar process here for special use permits, except I kind of interpret this reviewable every 24 months to kind of be a prescriptive thing rather than a reactive thing, if that makes sense. So that's it for my comments. I think there's a couple things on the driveway, the shipping containers that are worth just kind of adding to the narrative. I think the narrative that Attorney K provided is the right place to use as kind of the cover or the template for the special use permit. That's all that I have for my comments.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Wood about his narrative there?
And specifically, generically, any other information that planning commission feels that they need to address in a special use permit. And that would be things that are particularly unique to this site. For example, I would suggest that the narrative explicitly say that the plan commission approved or recommended certain paving extents and reground asphalt in absence of the need to pave the entire site. That'd be a perfect thing to put in here and memorialize in special use permit.
As much for their protection as. ours.
Correct. Yeah, correct. And the intent is for dust control. So in reviewing this in 24 months, if it ain't working for dust control, then we'll have that discussion. Right.
So, Mr. K, I presume you've made note of some of the particular suggestions that Mr. Word had. in regards to like the lot width at the front and all that kind of stuff that he recommended.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. We're more than happy to revise the narrative of the special use application that we previously submitted. We definitely would like to include comments or a section in there about the shipping containers being part of the special use permit.
Yep.
Therefore, we do two things at once instead of doing additional paperwork. So we'll include that. I was talking to Cheyenne as the conversations were going. It sounds like there's only about 3 shipping containers and they're used for, I guess, miscellaneous storage.
Small tool storage, so it's not sitting
Stuff
outside.
you don't want walking away and.
Right,
It's wet and snowed out.
And so if push comes to shove, those I think can be moved. They're not there for the long term, but they're, what it sounds like miscellaneous storage for the short term.
Yeah, and I would just advise you. I'm curious as to how the planning commission would react. If you think you need 3, there's no harm in asking for 5. But if you say 3 and suddenly a 4th shows up and, you know, people see that from bug line and someone's gonna, just like what happened, you know, there's gonna be a complaint and whatever.
It's
So-
kind of like the recommendation we make to people when they say, oh, my plan of operation, no, we don't need any Saturday, Sunday hours, but then comes out, well, yeah, well, it's just gonna be me working it. Well, okay, then you need to have some hours of it, right?
So we'll revise that. We'll have a discussion. I'll talk to them how many they use, maybe add on 1 or 2 as you guys are recommending. But we'll include that in the special use permit, so that's fine. Identifying any easements, we're not aware of any, but yes, that would come up in the title commitment.
Yep.
Which I haven't reviewed yet, but I'll take a look at it.
Sure.
Get a copy if you want, but that will say. Sometimes there's a building easement or something like that, but we're not aware of any. We'll send that to you, so that should satisfy any questions about the easements. Talk about my other next note is more narrative on the shipping containers, more narrative on the reground asphalt being placed where there's currently stone, and that the plan commission is approving this in lieu of full-on asphalt pavement.
Yep.
Those are all of my notes. If there's other yeah, if there's other items that are on it, we're more than happy to.
Okay, I do suggest that along with that reground asphalt, we say, you know, with the intent of something to do with dust control, however you want to word that.
Okay.
An issue that came up at the previous meeting, as you said, there wouldn't be any like debris or material stored outside that would primarily be equipment. Or only be equipment.
Right. So
as a contractor storage yard, you are allowed to store some material out loud, right? But it has to be shown on your site. So I would just advise you again now, you know, if you were someday had the intent of transplanting your operation from over there to over here, I know that's not your intent, but if stuff isn't shown on the site plan right now, then you just have to come back in for a revision.
Yep.
So I just want to be transparent about that. And if you do intend to store anything, or you would like to ask permission now, just in case, then we want to add specifics on the site plan about the location of the pile, what's going to be in the pile, the height of the pile, or area of the pile, etc.
So the question from Mr. Mike Brandt is that for the reground asphalt to be put down, which what they're gonna do, they're gonna need to crush it.
Yeah.
Are they able, now this would be like a kind of like a one-time process project, it's not
Yeah.
every year thing. Are they allowed to just to do that? Is that what they're being?
There is a crushing permit process to bring in a temporary crusher operation.
Okay, can we include that in this special use permit where it's? I mean. Well, I'm just trying to get a list of all the permits we need, so we.
Yeah, no,
so
that's
we can
that's a
do it.
good point.
I think we're checking off all the boxes.
It requires village board
It's,
approval.
yeah, it's just village board approval and it's crushing application that just basically is like when you're gonna do it, you know what, how much you're gonna do, what you're gonna do, where. And then it's approved by the village board, so.
So I would suggest that be separate.
Yeah, we'd be making a recommendation to approve.
No, the plan commission never approved,
No.
never said anything about crushing permits. That's always been strictly a village board item. But that's money involved.
So we'll submit a application for the crushing. My guess is hypothetically they'll have 6 months to get it done, and then they have that window or whatever it is, 2 months or.
I think it's a shorter period than that. It's like 14 days or 30 days or something.
Yeah, so you don't have to do it until you get closer to that time of when you,
Right.
you know you're gonna. need it.
Okay.
For the permit, you mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
because it takes a little bit of time to get
Get
a
the-
stockpile
Right.
in order to crush it.
Right. See, this is what the quarries did was there were some quarries that they would stockpile their rubble. And then they would come get the permit and then run it through the crusher and then the crusher would leave and the pile would be gone. So.
But we own the crusher, so
Right.
it's,
I'd also add developers in the village commonly do this where they're blasting and then they're stockpiling kind of their blast spoils and then they come in and crush it for road beds on site, et cetera.
Did you say something then about the 70-foot width for the special use?
I did, we
Yeah.
should add that in.
I don't think we got clarification on the gate screening.
Oh,
Previous.
Gate screening, you know.
Previous.
You can clarify that.
Yeah, they're more than happy to put bushes or provide any type of greens.
I'm talking about the privacy. The site plan says elect,
no, you can't put, you won't be able to do that in front of the fence, because
right,
there's no topsoil. You'd have to build a big berm of topsoil.
We're talking about in
What I'm
slats,
talking
in the
about is-
slats.
Yeah.
whatever privacy screening or
Yeah.
fence or gate or slats or.
We would
whatever.
use the slats, like. So it looks nice,
Okay,
you know.
Is there an ordinance for the village?
there's not.
A
And this
fence
fits
permit.
into that weird, there's a downtown design standard thing that's being developed, so.
Is there a permit for the fence? That the fence company would have to hold, because those holes log.
I think there is. I think
Into the
we found
bedrock.
Kelly's Rock Solid Storage, they're doing a gate right now and there's a building
permit.
permit for the gate.
Okay.
So a special use permit is not necessarily needed then tonight. We could table it to the next meeting while they get all this stuff together.
Well,
Correct, so action on the special use permit, even though it doesn't require a public hearing, you could take action conditioned upon them owning the land and it being rezoned. You know what I mean?
Which would be our preference.
And kind of
Our preference would be
addressing the.
similar to the plan of operation where it's approved contingent upon rezoning, contingent upon closing, contingent upon meeting these items that we just.
we want to close.
Yeah,
And we'll be back in front of you 2 more times, so if you have more questions.
Yeah.
Right.
What that contingency, however, what time frame do you recommend? So there's no ambiguity, you know, we're talking 30 days, we're talking 60 days, 45 days. And a satisfaction.
I'm just picking a number here, you guys can chime in, I would say 60 days from closing.
So,
To
Meet all the requirements.
to meet these requirements, which is
Yeah.
potentially the big one would be the.
getting the pile of asphalt
Yeah.
in order to crush it and cleaning up the garbage. I mean, we have a month's worth of straightening that place up. There's stuff everywhere, literally piles. Probably 2 dumpster loads worth.
So this
More than
is-
that, maybe.
Understanding that you have to stockpile this stuff and get the permit and crush it, I'd almost be inclined to, again, Mr. Wood's point, build in a little more flexibility here for everybody and Why don't we do something more like 90 days? Give you more time to make sure you have adequate stockpile to come in and do it one time and get it done. And
What, do you have a closing date yet, or?
No,
They're trying to-
once we get all of this.
Yeah, so
then,
we'll
you know,
do 90 days for closing date or something like that. So if it takes them 2 months to get it closed, then you'll be in the middle of winter. I'm sorry.
We're gonna get it done.
So the question then becomes now, if we're gonna do this as a contingency, I guess we gotta get some answers. How many sea containers in size?
We should probably ask for a few more than we have, just to make sure, so 6,
Six,
are they 40 or are they 20s?
some are 20, some are 40s.
Well, I don't know, yeah, just say 40. 40 by 8 by 8.
So how many?
6.
6.
It's 40, no 20?
And we only have 3.
I mean, if we ask for 40 and it happens to be a 20-foot container, does that
Yeah.
matter?
So I'll make note 6 40-foot shipping containers or equivalents. And I think Attorney K, your narrative should say. Being allowed due to adequate site screening overall. Can we say that?
Did I say that again?
The reason why, somehow acknowledge the reason why we're letting you have all these shipping containers is because of thorough and adequate screening.
Gotcha, yes.
And therefore, when this is reviewed 24 months down the road, we get a bunch of people sick of looking at your shipping containers, we know, all right, either get your shipping containers out of here or fix your screen. You know what I mean?
Yep, understood.
And does Attorney K have items A through H that you listed here?
I only handed them to him before the meeting.
Okay. Yeah, so yeah.
Yes, Plan Commissioner, I do have that.
Okay.
But if you could send me a copy of Miles.
Sure. Electronically.
Thank you.
Mr. Grimm is wordsmithing away down there, it appears.
Make a motion to approve a special use permit based on contingency of ownership of 90 days closing. With the, no more than 6 sea containers, 40-foot. Reclaimed asphalt and 70-foot width entrance and whatever else the staff had made mention. A through H.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
The motion and a second. Now further discussion. Anybody else have any other questions or comments? Council, do you feel that we've left out anything of significance here that we need to cover?
I think you covered the essential things adequately.
Well, thank you, Ben, for your thorough analysis and Mr. K and all the applicants. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Discussion and possible action regarding the rezoning of parcels LANB 0067965, LANB 00697965001. LANB 00679650002, located approximately 20151 West Main Street from B2 and Q to LI Light Industrial.
So real quickly, the only things that are perhaps not in conformance with L-I is that the minimum frontage requirement is not satisfied. It's only 70 feet. But again, I point out that the village went through the comprehensive land use planning process and just identified and acknowledged the site as long-term intended use is indeed industrial. And as we belabored earlier tonight, that I think we're all okay with the 70-foot lot width. Point of clarification, I don't know if their intent is to keep all three parcels separate or combine them together. Minimum lot size for L-I is 40,000 square feet, which is just under an acre. So presumably, I think each of these lots on their own satisfy the minimum lot size requirement. With that, just quite plainly, the recommendation would be to go ahead and proceed with the upcoming public hearing. I believe that's scheduled in conjunction with the June 12th board meeting. And then, the plan commission can take action after that.
Weren't we recommending a CSM for this because you had a landlocked parcel? Two of them, actually.
Yeah, so that's why I want clarification. They've either got to combine them all or they would have to give themselves cross-access easements.
So you know what your lot is.
So, one question, and Council, Taylor Morgan, you can chime in. It's my understanding that when you have one property owner that owns two properties next to each other, you can't legally have an easement. You can't give an easement to yourself. So it's, the law is basically there that says that if you have parcel A and parcel B, you can, this can possibly give yourself an easement. So if you own both parcels, giving an easement to yourself, not really a legal option. Yeah. Now we could look into that and vet that more. The general concept is once you own both parcels, the easements go away.
What we've seen, so this also came up recently with Kelly's rock solid storage proposal. They're a landscape business on West Good Hope Road. And then they created a parcel, bought adjoining land and then split it off and kind of are operating two different businesses on two parcels adjoining each other. They have some language of, hey, there's a cross written on the CSM is a cross access easement, say like from the owner of lot 1 to the benefit of lot 2 and vice versa or something to that effect.
So I guess
I'm not familiar with the
so
law there. I'm not that.
I guess the more pressing question would be, is the village requiring a full certified survey map? Now, I think that language kind of gets thrown around in different contexts. So there's kind of different levels of a survey. There's a standard border survey, and then a higher level would be a CSM where we're actually changing the lot lines. So right now, the grants are trying to buy the three parcels. So even if we wanted to do a CSM, right now we couldn't do it, we don't own it.
Right.
But eventually, if they wanted to, they could change the lot lines and make it all one parcel and redo the tax keys. But I don't think that's their intent right now, since they're gonna own all three.
I would also just point out one or two of the three are in TID number 1. And so combining them, well, I don't know. I've heard from the appraisal, from the appraiser can be a problem.
Well, and I think it becomes less of an issue if they all get rezoned to the same zoning,
Correct.
right? So.
Right. Because currently, right now, the west half of the properties are B2, the east half are the quarry. So we've kind of gone through this analysis and the recommendation from the council and from the village, and Mr. Benwood is, hey, let's do this the right way. Let's get these all zoned the same, which is what we're doing. So.
I believe we did have a discussion about that, and I believe that my suggestion was that we do have a CSM to combine all the lots. That would give you flexibility, because when you have, say, down the road, you want to make some improvements, build another building, you have setbacks that you have to consider regardless of the respective lots. From a mapping standpoint, it's easier for the village to regulate and control that. It's understandable that you can't do it until, well, you can do it one of two ways. The current owner can do it. That's not gonna happen given the lack of cooperation. Or it could be a contingency as part of the review of the plan of operation that you obtain approval for CSM within a certain time period.
And I think that analysis is correct, and if I may, I'll just talk to these guys out in the open here. What they're basically saying is there's currently 3 parcels, so at a certain point, if you ever wanted to go through and build a bigger barn or a bigger building, you're gonna have all these setback requirements. You can't just put a building in the middle of 3 separate parcels because you're on the lot line. So at that point in the future, they would make you do a CSM. So when you build in the future at any time, you're gonna have to go through the CSM process. So
Why don't we just do it together? Oh.
Basically, we're.
After you.
It would just be, the question is, would you want to do it in like 5 years when you get to that point, or did you want to maybe do it now?
I mean, there's expense involved.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, you have to get a really.
So-
And then you're not gonna sell off one of your lots in the future, you would have a lot.
Right,
Yeah,
so
just-
it would be our request that we approve it, all the zoning, prove it as is, it's 3 separate lots, and it's my advice to these guys, letting them know now that when you guys do plan to do anything else, they're gonna say, hey, you have all these setbacks, you're gonna have to do it in the future. So you guys are on notice, you're gonna have to do it in the future. But when you get to that point, you guys can do it then.
We can't do it until we own it, and you have to get the different surveys, which is all gonna take time, which if we are required to do it before we close, we're not gonna be able to close once again.
So what about this TID delineation? What happens then if 2 parcels are in one district and one's in another, and then they get combined? Is it in, is it out?
Well, the announced use is for a continuation of contractor storage usage. So you're not gonna be making any modifications that will result in any tax increment per se. So I don't know what the definitive answer is.
What I've heard through the municipal finance advisor Ellers is that the appraiser gets annoyed more or less because they have to establish the base value in the TID district every single year. And the cleanest way to do that is, like TID law requires when you create it, you have to have whole parcels in there. Over the life of the TID, things change, and when they do, if it's no longer a whole parcel boundary, then they have to estimate
The new base
what,
value.
if it's 1, then they have to estimate, okay, how much of the value of this new 1 larger parcel is in the TID each year. So,
And they can deal with that.
It happens.
When we get to it.
right,
Okay.
And it's not like it never happens. There's a process in
Yeah.
place to deal with it.
so this one you cannot approve conditionally, because this is the one where public hearing is a required part of the process. You've already, I believe you've already recommended to the village board that they schedule a public hearing. Prior to seeing the full submittal of all the plan of operation and all these, whatever, so. Hector, would the appropriate action to be just table it until after the public hearing? Right.
Yeah, because the way I also look at it is right now, we had any comments, so why would we want this? No. No, I would just say, I'd make a motion, we table this till after the public hearing.
We have a motion. Second. And a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Motion excuse me, all those opposed? Motion carries. Item 14,
Discussion and possible action regarding a revision to ordinance section 78-48. Accessory uses and structures to contemplate the total number and area of accessory structures allowed in residential districts that do not have an attached garage. Thank you, Beth.
Don't have it back.
Okay, so this came up, I was contacted by a resident that, Mr. Summers down on Lannon Road, who has a detached garage and, wishes to expand on that. However, we currently have a weird situation in our ordinances regarding attached garages and accessory structures in homes with detached garages. So Ben looked through the ordinances and has come up with a recommendation that I'll kind of outline there.
Yeah, sure. So I apologize. The highlighted portion in the ordinance that I suggested change might not have come across real clear, but in effect, the issue is whether or not you have an attached garage right now. You can have two accessory structures in a residential property. You can have two accessory structures up to 800 square feet. So the trick is properties that have an attached garage can have that plus two accessory structures up to 800 square feet. Properties that have a detached garage can only have their garage plus one other accessory structure, and combined they can only be 800 square feet. So problem is, some folks with a detached garage want to either add on to it, or let's say they have a 600 square foot detached garage. The construction cost to add another 200 square feet is kind of ridiculous. They would like to, either build a separate building or tear this down and build a bigger garage. You just Google what the standard size of a 3-car garage is. For example, it's about 1,200 square feet. So what I attempted to do here, just bouncing it off of Patrick, was devise a line that could be added to the accessory structure ordinance that would specifically apply to detached garages and allow them to have up to 3 accessory structures, only one of which can be larger than 800 square feet if it's the garage. And then they could have 2 other accessory structures that would total 800 square feet. So with that as a backdrop, I'll just read you my proposed addition to the ordinance here. On parcels where the primary residence was constructed in 2023 or prior and does not have an attached garage, a total of 3 accessory buildings may be allowed, and which may not exceed a total area that is the lesser of either A, insert the desired number of maximum square footage, or B, the rear yard area ratio described in section 78-48-2B, which is 30% of the rear yard. We cannot exceed that. Only one accessory structure may be larger than 800 square feet. In the event that there are a total of 3 accessory structures, the smallest 2 structures may not have a combined area of greater than 800 square feet. So the nuance that I'm trying to address here in the language is you're not, let's say the maximum area for accessory structures when you have detached garage is 2,000 square feet. That would be a 3-car garage plus 800 square feet split over 2 other buildings, right? So the intent here is to not say, okay, suddenly this person could have 2 different 1,000 square foot accessory buildings, because now they have something that other residences cannot have, if that makes any sense. So this is just really the nitty-gritty of trying to address, okay, you can have a 3-car garage plus the same amount and size of accessory structures that everyone else can. On the last page of the packet here, I put some examples of where this has come up. And specifically, I add the statistics here of the 30% of the rear yard area ratio. And that 30% maximum area is an existing limit in the ordinances. I'm just trying to demonstrate here with a handful of sample properties, how that would apply in areas of the village where I'm aware that there are detached garages. So the first couple of properties have actually reached out to either Patrick or me to just inquire about the rules and the limits, etc. These are on Lannon Road, so 30% of the rear yard would be, between 3,000 and 4,000 square feet. Obviously, if you set a total limit of 2,000 or 1,800 or 2,400 square feet total, they would kind of hit that limit before they hit the 30% limit. And I'll just point out that these properties right now, the first one has like a 500 square foot garage and a couple of, at least one little garden shed, maybe a second garden shed, I don't know. The second property there is also on Good Hope Road, so they have a garage of detached, just under 800 square feet. And because they're so close, they essentially cannot have any other accessory structures, whether that be a garden shed or whatever. And then the third example there is actually a block of 4 different properties in the Hatfield plat. This block of properties, I kind of made 2 different areas. I show the total area of loosely, in my opinion, what you would consider the rear yard, as well as the size of the garage. And just for perspective, you could try to figure out how this could affect this area of town where they have the smallest lots, etc. So these would kind of trip out at that maximum 30% of rear yard ratio, which in these 4 examples is as low as, would afford as low as 1,700 square feet of accessory structures. So you can see that these have a variety of sizes of garages already, 500 square feet up to 3 of them are 500 square feet, one of them is 800 square feet. Again, for that one on the lower right corner, that's almost 800 square feet already, they technically cannot have a garden shed or anything else. So if this went into effect, someone could presumably tear down their 500 square foot garage and build a 1,200 square foot garage if they wanted to, and whatever. And I guess with that, I'll leave it up to you for discussion on whether any of this makes sense or is a good idea or a bad idea or whatever.
Well, this actually is, I was happy to see this because I live in a house where I have a detached garage and I couldn't add any more to it and it doesn't have foundation under it, so I can't make it attached to my house. Like I was looking at all these different ways, like could I somehow attach my detached garage to my house so that I can, change things? But because I can't, because it's not a footed structure.
Right.
So for me personally, I think it's a great idea because as we develop, as Hector said, into a more residential community, our standards of wanting to store vehicles and other things indoors is increasing. I think that's society wise. And so many houses here have these little tiny 1-car garage and then they have a riding lawnmower and they're putting them in. Even myself, I had one of those,
Don't say that. Don't say
No.
Well, that you do make a good point, though, that kind of the limit of the accessory structure area forces people into doing solving that in a way that the village wants to ban.
Right. I think it's good value to have more permanent storage structures, yeah.
For context, I'll volunteer. I never measured my garage here until this last month, and it's 1,200 square feet. So my garage is legal non-conforming. And I can't have, if I wanted a separate little garden shed, I can't have it, so.
Right.
Well, like you said, this is all. This should be not 2023. This should be anything prior to 2000. Because reason why I say that is because most of these areas that's affected is actually the Hatfield district. And
Sure.
so everything that's beyond, 2000, I think the last house on Good Hope, right next to the second house down on the corner, is probably one of the last houses built around 2000 in this town until they started building Whispering and everything over here. Because up on Whispering, we know those lots were specifically sized, and they knew that they were never gonna be able to drive a car around behind and put them in a building.
Yeah,
So they're gonna have the small sheds back there.
Yeah.
So I think this should be changed from 2023 to 2000 for starters. But all these accessory buildings still have to meet all setback requirements.
right.
Now, when I expanded on my garage. Back in the 90s,
97.
96, 97, and added a shed, I had to go to the variance committee to get approval for all that. On Good Hope, there is a couple old there's at least one old horse barn yet, there was a couple. One's been taken down and has been replaced with a garage.
Yeah.
But there's that horse barn, but the horse barn is probably pretty good size yet. And it's got a milk shed on that property yet, so, they're gonna be, if they wanted to replace, it's gonna be close. I believe Mr. Newman's property down on Main Street has a horse barn, that's probably exceeds that.
Buggy barn.
Okay, buggy barn, I'm sorry, they're called buggy barn, in fact, they had a horse that pulled the buggy out though.
Yeah, they kept the buggy in the barn.
So, I would, the only thing, that's why I'm saying is, we have to kind of make sure that this is not where all of a sudden somebody says, hey, I built a house in 2022, I could do this. No,
Well, so I went back and forth, me, myself, and I, with the three of us argued this. And, I struggled to find a good reason why to have a date in there at all. Because the thing is, someone could, I'm not aware of this, but someone could have. There are a couple of vacant lots in the Hatfield plat. Someone could have done something, I don't know. But. Maybe someone somewhere built an 800 square foot garage last year. And now if you say 2000, well, then that person's always just gonna be like, well. I just built this house with an 800 square foot thing, but now I'm just kind of in no man's land. And it's like that either, to your point, if we say the reason why you want the year 2000 in there is because you don't think anything's been built since, then why have a date at all? Because it just, if people don't build houses like that anymore, then the situation just naturally doesn't exist, then why do you gotta put a year to it?
So it appears to me, if I can interject real quick, the way it's written with the date in there, it seems to me that what you're trying to do by adding the date is saying that anything going forward, you're trying to encourage
Attached.
garages. Was that not the intent?
Correct. So there are just south of these houses here on Lanning Road. There are 3 vacant lots that all have. Water and sewer now. So, yes, the intent here would be to push them for have an attached garage.
Same with the Good Hope Drive. Lot back there. There's a
Yeah,
few scattered.
yeah. I don't know why someone would. I can't fathom that, but I don't know. Oh, or maybe they can only afford to build a house now and they'll come back and build a garage later.
The ordinance requires new structures have garages with cars. Cannot have a house without a garage.
There you go.
see, that's the other thing too, is I thought new ownerships. If they don't have a garage, they had to build a garage. I saw it on the ordinance one point this morning and I lost track of where I saw it, you know, but there was something in the ordinance somewhere about they had to have a garage. So, because I was trying to think now, you know, the Betty Ann property, you know,
Right here below then, item 3, garages, private garage at least 400 square feet in area. Shall be required for each single family duplex and multifamily unit hereafter erected.
But you're also saying when it changes property ownership?
because I know when the property ownership changes, that's when the driveway, the paving ordinance kicks in on that property too. So, but yeah, if you're gonna say at least 400 square feet, you know, attached, you'd have to shake out the word detached right there.
Because it doesn't say attached or detached.
Oh, in the other ordinance. Or
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or in the other line of the same ordinance.
Yeah, 7848, number 3.
So the reason why it's attached or detached is take Rock Point Village as the most recent example, right? Where they've got like the bays of detached garages.
Right.
Multifamily.
Yeah. So this is what you're reading here, the subsection 3, garages, a private garage, at least it's broadly all residential uses. You know, I think what you're steering toward is, you know, single family. Changing it so that single families have to have an attached garage, newly constructed. So,
That little house on Good Hope that just sold last year, that doesn't have a garage, it changed hands and nobody built a garage. There's no room for it, I don't think, right?
Which house?
I was looking at it on our assessors.
In front of the Colley
So
farm?
it's just a couple down from the post office, that little white bungalow that sold last year.
One that had the piping stolen out of it. That's for sale.
They have a shed in the back that I believe at one point was big enough for a car, a small car. So eventually it became a shed, like, or was the garage came down? The garage came down and there was a shed next to it, that's what it was. The garage came down, it deteriorated, it came down. So,
well, it says hereafter erected, so. Most of these ordinances were adopted in 97 or 03 or something, 97, so. It basically requires any house built after 1997 to have a garage.
Okay. That makes more sense than someone.
So we're basically recommending to the village board, take up 7848. And then basically they're looking at correcting item 2D. And then 3. And by adding on 3, any parcel where the primary residence was constructed in 2020 or prior does not have attached garage, so 3 structures which cannot exceed a total area that is less than, would you say 1,600 square feet? Is that what you're trying to say?
For the combined max,
Yeah.
I mean, sounds kind of nutty, but boy, I think it should be 2,000 or 2,200. Because I just look at. Maybe this is fair, my personal example with my legal non-conforming garage.
Okay, 2,200. With only one structure that may be larger than 800, so you know, there you violate the 800 then.
But no, the intent here is to say,
Other than. Right.
basically, once you have a garage. Then your other 2 accessory buildings can't combine to be more than 800. Right?
Okay,
So here's an example. If say the limit were 2,400 square feet, this does not afford someone the right to have 3 different 800 square foot garages. Right? You get one that's 800 or larger, And the other two combined can go up to 800.
But, yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
okay, then I make a motion to recommend to the village board that they. Bear with me for a second, I didn't write it down. To revise the ordinance 7848, section 2. Paragraph D, line item 3. On parcels where the primary residence was constructed in 2020 or prior. A total of 3 accessory buildings may be allowed not to exceed a total area of 2,200 square feet. And so forth, the rest of the statement.
So we have a
So you're-
motion,
You're back.
we have a motion, we have a second.
I second.
Okay, now we can discuss.
So we're going back to the 2020
Yeah, 2020.
versus the 2023.
And did you say 2,200 square feet?
Yes.
And did you include number 3 as well, sub 3?
Wasn't that already in there?
that was specific, your motion was specific to adding something.
Okay.
Yeah, because 3 is, I think it's already in the ordinance.
And do we have to recommend it to the village board, then have the village board tell the legislative committee to look at this, and then they go back? And how do we cut out some of these steps?
Well, and because this is a zoning ordinance that requires.
What was that?
And people wonder why
Public
stuff
hearing, right?
takes long
Yep.
to get done.
It's going to require a public hearing too.
Well. Take in consideration the fact that. Being the devil's advocate here. What you're gonna do is allow. The increase in the infill. Of backyards. And. The village, in certain areas has uniform lots, and others it doesn't. So the goal of, taking time to look at these things. Is to examine all the possibilities. Because not. Everyone will be able to take advantage of this. But one way to do it would be. To send it to. The legislative committee at the same time that you send it to the board. And the legislative committee can start looking at. Those application issues. And then it goes back to the board. And proceeds with the public hearing as such.
Yeah, it was a little more, tongue in cheek, but, this one, I don't know that there's any. No crisis staring us down that needs to, provide any special circumstances for this. It's just-
Maybe the guy that got that house on a remodel up there on. The landlord might have to tear down part of that garage.
I'm thinking all of it.
Oh, yeah. We're doing it.
I'm pretty sure that's a garage and a shed.
Yeah, I could say it might even be a workshop, well, hey, you can't.
I hear he's got a grow up.
And a greenhouse.
Do you want me to modify, do you want me to?
Nefarious.
There's no residence in the attic.
As long as he doesn't hit a gas line going to the garage. You want me to modify the?
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries, Mr. Lost Steve.
No, I'm still here.
Okay, I didn't hear your eye come in a couple.
Glad to vote, who is he?
I've already made it to my destination.
You could have gone there and back probably. Discussion of possible action regarding undesirable storage at the following locations: A, 7090 North Town Line Road, Artistic Stone. B, tax key LANB 0068980.
Marcy Farms LLC. Tax key LANV 0068999002. W185N 7487 Narrow Lane. Tax key LANV 006899901. Juan Snyder Landscaping. And E is others. So, as I understand it, these are all properties we've discussed in the past. We've gone through processes of investigating the properties, either with the chief and or the building inspector. We've all, I believe, seen all of these properties already. And I think the idea is that this is kind of a follow-up to check on compliance.
I think where this last left off is that Hector advised that new pictures be gathered.
Yep, after now that winter is over and presumably the snow is gone and conditions were better for evaluating the current condition, right?
So it's just. I brought it back just so it doesn't fall off.
Right, so
So we gotta send the building inspector out for pictures again. What we would need to have done, but the question was, I think it was mentioned that one of the previous meetings at Artistic Stone, the guy has moved all the garbage to the next lot. So we now need to know who the next lot is and go after that guy.
More coming in.
This they stone is 100% clean. But it's all 100 feet away.
A couple more times, it'll be in the town of Lisbon, it won't be our problem.
I can see where this is gonna go. We're gonna start having neighboring property playing the show game there, right?
Redo, just like we put it off and off and off.
Well, then we'll just have to have a much shorter enforcement window.
Last time. We keep reading and we keep putting it off, and we keep trying to do things appropriately. And we've had the chief go out there, we've had the building inspector go out there, we've had pictures taken. This has taken over a year and a half. Somebody's got to get off their dead backsides and do it.
My understanding, and I would ask the clerk, is that there's no paperwork on this. Is that a correct understanding?
We've had pictures over a year ago.
I believe.
The building inspector did send or do a report on his findings of all the properties
Recently?
last year when they, the first time around, not. I mean.
So that's where I'm saying, I think this is conversation we're having right now, we had a couple months ago. And it directed Hector to take enforcement. Hector said, okay, this evidence, this documentation is kind of stale. To have a more compelling case, get fresh evidence.
Right.
And I think that's the step that it's on.
Yeah, so I think that's what we do. I think we have the inspector and the chief go out and get new. Retake the photographs, the same areas.
For any areas that the nuisance has been
Yeah.
moved to.
Yeah.
So, yes, if he's out there taking pictures of Artistic, just kind of like. Take the pictures of the next property and then have the building inspector supply us the complaint form, so the village the complaint form. So you start that process with that resident.
Well, you can have the building inspector provide the report that he previously made, if he took any pictures, and that way, you can do the comparison to that.
Because this really started with a complaint from Kelly Landscaping that time, and that's where it all started, and it's just.
That in KCOM.
Yeah.
When they were doing the development down there.
Which somehow,
Illegally.
yeah, and it's somehow it's there and it's not.
That it's been approved by the building inspector according to the owner.
And maybe we need to have the building inspector come in once and tell us about this stuff.
I believe there's also something about the building inspector and permitted. That was supposed to be checked on through Mid-City and the cancellation of permits. Has that ever been acted on?
So he's got. he's still got open permits, I believe, in mid-city, right, because he
Yeah.
can't. The electrician hasn't finished up or whatever, or,
They don't have access, right? They can't close the permit if they're not allowed access to inspect it.
I would suggest that's,
Heard tales about the building inspector going beyond the scope of the permit and thereby holding open the permits.
well, but how does that relate to this?
It doesn't, but it's all kind of stuff that's been pushed off to the side. And the more we talk about it, the more it gets pushed off to the side.
Well, good news is we're all here and we have the ability to do something.
And artistic is in compliance.
So,
There's something, so
I think, are we making a recommendation then, or somebody making?
Okay, I make a motion that the village board instruct the building inspector and the police department to go out and re-evaluate and picture take these properties for undesirable storage, see if they've cleaned them up. And to look at others, which would be the property adjacent to Artistic Stone.
Okay, and any other obvious violations that might be found or something along those lines. So we have a motion, do we have a second?
That's like hecker or something.
Do we have a second?
yes.
Second.
Okay, now,
I've never seen any photos. I've never been told where the photos are. Never seen any reports. And yet there may be an expectation that we take action. What exactly do you mean by undesirable?
I should have brought in the pictures from last year. I had them on my table today. I could have passed them down to you. I left them at home and it was provided before. What it is a bunch of cars and boats and whatnot at Artistic Stone. It's a bunch of
And how do you believe the boats to be? It's not.
oh, one's on a site like this, you know, and another one was just up like this with the bow, you know, I mean.
that's part of the whole packet that we looked at before.
Yes.
And Artistic Stone claiming that it got rid of the stuff.
The guy that had all that stuff is from Illinois.
Yeah.
He moved it to the next property, so
So
it's
he
not,
moved the boat.
he moved all this pile.
Okay. The adjoining property, what about Marcy Farms? Can you describe?
It's down here on Good Hope, somebody all of a sudden has got a whole bunch of equipment or something like that back in the
farm
weeds.
equipment,
Farm equipment,
shipping containers,
shipping containers, stuff like that.
Juan Snyder landscape shipping containers.
Yeah.
You're coming into town on Good Hope Road and you look up the power line corridor, it's just littered with all kinds of stuff strewn about. That's true.
And part of this is Menominee Falls has cracked down on some of these people and if one guy's moved some of the stuff off of Menominee Falls onto his other property land. So he's satisfying the falls, now he's got us going.
Well, as you saw, earlier today, item 7, CSC storage. These things do not move at anything but a glacier pace. But there's a lot more movement there than we've had before, and so hopefully the word will get out. I will follow up, have a meeting with the building inspector, the police chief. And maybe somebody else, for village president. So we can formalize the process, to do that. And, I think that, we're on the road back to
Because I know when we went after Russ's auto body, I believe you were on the board at the time. So Russ's auto body up here, that was a couple of years running too to clean that property up and it finally did get resolved. But it takes, yeah, I know it takes time, but You gotta start, you
Well,
know,
and I think the point is that the first step is to have a process, then we have to document along that process. And that's gonna be a faster path to enforcement.
well, see, and the thing is, when we had the pictures and everything like that, it was documented, so then the letter should have went. And so that's why we're kind of bringing this all back around, because, okay, it's got to be, we're starting over again, we'll get all new pictures, we'll have to start this all over again.
I would invite you to outline the process as you see it to be most effective and maybe share that with the commission at our next meeting, if you've got specific ideas about
I could do that.
how that might best work. And we can run that by council and get some feedback from them. But I think you're right. You know, the point is that we've got too many things that have been happening in this village and there's no process for it. And then you get, what you get is you get a bunch of people sitting up here looking at each other, wondering why something didn't get done.
Maybe we'll have to make it where when we would put them on the list and we send them a notice and then we start a clock and then we start, you know.
Brenda's got too much stuff to do to babysit this crap for us, so, you know, we need to have a process.
I know.
And we initiate the process and then she's got a roadmap to follow. There's got one too. Yes, Bill.
A couple of things. First of all, we do have a process that we did 10, 12 years ago that worked very well. We cleaned up a lot of properties. I want to make one comment here. There's really no legal description of undesirable storage in our ordinances. Most everything we cleaned up in the past had to do with screening. And so somebody's gonna have to do something to describe what undesirable storage is versus on screen. On screen is really easy.
So, let's see, now I've lost track.
There is a motion and a second.
There is a motion and a second, right? Any other comments, discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Motion to adjourn. We have a motion to adjourn. And a second and a third. Fourth. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried for adjourn.
I won't be able to watch.
Well, that was fun.
You have a minute. I won't keep them.
You only got seen the bad once. That I heard.
I have a hard time getting.
Bye, everyone.
Do you have a question though? When he talked about having that area that he wants to have for people from the Bug Light to come and picnic and, you know, use that area.
Where you want to click on.
Is the insurance coverage?
Yeah, no, we're gonna go through all that on the beautification. I want to go through that and what I'll probably have to do is maybe.
I don't
I don't know.
recording. Oh, wait. Where does it say stop?
Somebody will trip and fall. Yeah.
Stop recording, the stop button.